This is Jocko Podcast number 75 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
We have shared the incommunicable experience of war. We have felt, we still feel the passion of life to its top. In our youth, our hearts were touched by fire. That's a quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes, Supreme Court judge. Lots of people know that, but they may not know. Civil War soldier, served with the 20th Regiment of Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry, saw action all over the place. Peninsula Campaign, the Wilderness. He was wounded at the Battle of Ball's Bluff, also wounded at Antietam, and also wounded at the Battle of Chancellorsville. So I think it's safe to say that he knew and understood war. And that quote right there is from the beginning of another book about another man that knew war. Major Dick Winters. Now, we've covered Dick Winters before, his book on this podcast, number 17, Beyond Band of Brothers. Great book. Lots of lessons learned. But there's another book, which is called Conversations with Major Dick Winters, Life Lessons from the Commander of the Band of Brothers. And it's written by a guy named Colonel Cole C. Kingseed, who was a friend of Dick Winters, and who actually was the co-author behind that book, Beyond Band of Brothers. So what's cool about this book is it really parses out some lessons about leadership in a conversational manner with Dick Winters, the things that he thought and the lessons that he learned, which, I mean, when you get an opportunity to learn from someone like this, you know what I do? I just be quiet. I listen and I learn, or in this case, I read and I learn. So this is also the guy, if you haven't seen this series on HBO, Band of Brothers, just go stop and just go watch it. It's, I don't know what it is, like 12 episodes. They're all awesome. Everybody asks me all the time, what's realistic war movies? That one, Band of Brothers, and then the Pacific, both HBO series, they're both phenomenal, and I recommend you watch it. You'll learn a lot about Dick Winters on that, and the guy that plays Dick Winters does a great job. And the way they tell the story and the realism and all that, it's just an awesome series. But here we can learn, not interpreted through a movie, but actually from the man as he spoke it. So here we go, taking it back to the book right now. From Dick Winters. D-Day was my first time in combat. So right there, let's just talk about that for a second. Yeah. Your first time in combat, what's your mission? D-Day. One of the largest military operations of all time. That's your first day in combat. Get some. Back to the book. I was mentally prepared and felt that I had done everything necessary to prepare myself for this precise moment. And you never know if you will measure up as a leader until the minute arrives when you face the enemy for the first time. Baptism by fire is a soldier's sacrament. There is always doubt. Hopefully, in combat, you perform as you train. So, I can't imagine that baptism by fire. D-Day. Again, get some sense of another good movie, Saving Private Ryan. The opening scene of that is the same thing, and that's one of the most intense parts of a movie ever, is the D-Day when they're hitting the beaches. It's crazy to watch, but watch it because it'll give you a feeling for what Dick Winters is talking about. And just imagine all these preparation that you do. You're getting ready, and guess what? Here it comes. Little mission called D-Day. Now, that was their initial operation, was during D-Day, but then they fought all over the place. And again, we cover this in Beyond Band of Brothers. But one of the most intense parts of their campaign was at Bastogne. So even though D-Day was hard, things didn't get easier once D-Day was complete. As much as I'm saying, oh yeah, D-Day was crazy, guess what? It wasn't even the hardest part for them. Things got worse. Back to the book. Most of the soldiers in Easy Company also felt that Bastogne was the most challenging month of the war. Staff Sergeant Bill Guarnier later claimed that he had been scared before, but he was absolutely petrified at Bastogne. From my perspective, Bastogne was the most miserable place I've been in my life. I was wet through and through. And naturally, being a paratrooper, I didn't have a change of clothes, no blanket, nothing. And it was a cold son of a gun. Things were all snafu'd, walking around in the black of night, not knowing where we were exactly, where everybody else was, houses burning, civilians crying, wringing your hands, and behind every bush a prospective enemy. We took our greatest number of casualties during that campaign. Easy Company was never the same after Bastogne. We lost so many veterans who had fought in Normandy and Holland. Joe Toy, Bill Guarnier, Buck Compton, Don Hubler, and many others. So this is where I started thinking, okay, leadership lesson learned right here. I operated the battalion command post that was situated approximately 75 yards from the main line of resistance. You might not think 75 yards is consequential, but it gave me the opportunity to think things through and divorce myself from the chaos surrounding the front line and to make calm, rational decisions under pressure. That is the toughest challenge for any leader. So obviously we're talking about detachment here, and I've talked about the fact that in order to detach, you can move off the line like 6 inches. I'm not kidding. In a smaller group, in a SEAL platoon, he's talking about a battalion, so they got hundreds of guys. So 75 yards is more appropriate. But if you're running a smaller unit, like one company or maybe a platoon, you got 30, 40 guys. If you move back off that firing line 6 inches, a foot, maybe 3 feet or 6 feet, you just step back and you get yourself out of that firefight where you can look around. That's what you're going to be able to do. You're going to be able to detach yourself from the chaos and the mayhem and make calm, rational decisions under pressure.
Yeah, and that's such a big deal. Like when you do that, when you detach, and then you can, you have a clearer vision. And a lot of times the answer or solution to some big problem is just so simple. Remember that story you were telling at the muster where one of your guys had an injured neck, so he couldn't participate, but he wanted to come along, so he's watching from the outside, and he's like, why don't they just step back and peel left?
Yeah, why don't they get online and peel left?
Yeah,
whatever the call was. So the story is, there was a guy that he was the Delta platoon commander in TU Bruiser. He took over my position. He took over as the TU Bruiser commander. Yeah. And then I was running the training. So once I was running the training, now I was overall making things happen. And he was going through the training, a different block of training, and he broke his neck. Yeah. Broke his neck. And thank God he didn't hurt his spinal cord, but he broke a vertebrae in his neck. So he had to wear one of those big, crazy neck braces. And he couldn't actually do the physical training. He wasn't allowed to bear any weight for a certain amount of time. But, luckily he was able to keep his job because he was very experienced. And so we were going through the land warfare portion of training. And I said, hey, man, I know you can't participate, but come out with me. Come out and check it out. And, you can see your guys and you can watch how they perform and you can, teach them some stuff and learn from what happens. So cool. He comes out and he's actually one of my best friends. So, of course, we just want to hang out anyways, which is what the teams is all about. So, of course, he has a chance to come out and hang out with me in the desert for a few weeks. He's going to do it. Yeah. So we get out there and, you've heard the stories about the training that I ran. It was really hard and evil and crazy and psychotic. Evil, yeah. And we're doing that. In that case, we had these really high speed laser tag system, and you got guys pinned down, you got explosions going off, you got just total mayhem going on. And his guys kind of froze up. And they're all pinned down in this little sort of ravine valley type thing. And I got my opposing force. So the SEALs that are pretending to be bad guys, pretending to be Mooj, they're all up in the mountains shooting down on them and killing everyone. And his guys, his leadership is just kind of frozen. And they're sitting there and not doing anything. And, he says to me, hey, can I help them? And I kind of thought about it for a minute. I go, yeah, go ahead. I go, give him, tell him what to do. Give him a prompt. Right. And he just, goes down to the leader, one of the leaders, and says, hey, get online and peel left. And so the guy looks at him and...
What does get online mean?
It's an organizational movement where all your troops are pointed in all different directions.
Gotcha, yeah.
Boom, you'd say contact right, online. And that means everyone's going to basically face in that direction. Gotcha. You'll get a couple guys that are doing rear security, a couple guys that are doing flank security, but everyone is now oriented in the same direction.
Gotcha, yeah.
And then the next call that comes is peel left, boom, and they're all going to start moving, in a direction that's going to get them out of this immediate threat. So he kind of says to the guy, hey, get online, peel left. Mm-hmm. So the guy looks at him and he just yells out, get online, peel left. And then everyone repeats that command. Right. And then everyone does it. And within a minute, they're home free. Yeah. It literally took like 1 minute once they made the decision. Yeah. So they get out of there and he looks at me and he goes, man, it's so easy when you're way up here. Now, way up here, to put it in perspective, was 4 feet behind these guys. That's all it was. It wasn't like we were up on some mountaintop with some incredible view. No, we were there. We were standing next to the guys, and we were a little bit elevated because they were laying down and we were standing up. But it was not inconceivable that you wouldn't have the same perspective if you just stepped back and maybe shuffled over a little bit. And he says, it's so easy when you're up here. Mm-hmm. And I said, bro, you remember when we went through training? And he says, yeah. And I said, it was always like this for me. And it was. I would always just pull myself back just enough to be able to see what the solution is. Yeah. So, yes, this detachment that he's talking about, and again, in a battalion situation where you're going 75 yards, and in a business situation, I actually see people do this. You're in a meeting. Yeah. And there's everyone around the table, and there's some problem that can't be solved. You literally step up and step away from the table. And just step back, get away from the group, because they're all mobbed up in group think. Everyone's going down the same trail. They're thinking about the same stuff, and there's no new ideas because they're all right there in this vortex. Yeah. Step away from the table. Yep. It's the same thing like step away from your computer. Yeah. You get to some point where you don't know where to go with you're looking for some kind of a solution to a problem. Yeah. Step back, see more. Yeah. Yeah, in writing, a lot of times they'll suggest just skip to the end. Don't worry about this in the middle. Just go to the end. How do you want it to end? And then it'll kind of open your mind up. It'll make you sort of forget about this problem right in front of you, Yeah. And give you kind of an overall view of it. Move you towards the solution that can be found. Yeah. Even in an argument with your wife or something like that. Oh, yeah. Well, for sure. That's a big one. For sure. Because when you definitely need to do it there. You're entrenched. You don't need to get entrenched. Don't do that. Yep. All right. And this part's been covered before on multiple occasions. You know what we're going to do? Cover it again. Little piece about discipline. I did have a routine that was instilled into me by Colonel Sink. At COA, Colonel Sink insisted that officers always shave in the morning, regardless of the situation. He would say, you shave every morning for the troops, and if you want to shave every evening for the women, that's up to you. I followed his orders because I realized that I had to set the proper example for the men. I needed to get their attention and let them all know that I intended to be around for a while and that the situation was not as bad as they might think. I remember before 2nd Battalion attacked Foy, I had awakened early and shaved before I ate breakfast. I later discovered that I had cut my face in multiple places. When Colonel Sink came up to check on the battalion's readiness before the attack commenced, he took one look at me and smiled. I realized that he was laughing at me for shaving on that bitterly cold morning. In hindsight, shaving at 0 dark 30 and freezing temperatures was pretty ridiculous. So, we talk about this all the time. Got to shave, got to maintain unmitigated daily discipline in all things. But what's cool, the reason I wanted to go over this again is because look at what he's doing psychologically to the troops. He's saying, I know I had to set an example. I needed to get their attention and make them realize, hey, we're going to be here for a while. And you know what? I'm just going to go daily. This is no big deal. Oh, you're worried about this stuff? I'm still shaving over here. Mm-hmm. I'm still waking up at 0400 shaving. And you're worried about this stuff? Nothing to worry about. We're good to go. And you need to maintain the same discipline. So that leading by example clearly is a big deal right there. And maintaining that routine. maintaining that discipline. Now, speaking of discipline, back to the book. Regardless of how disciplined an outfit is, too much time on your hands, too little activity, and too much alcohol make a volatile combination. So this book skips around a little bit, but I put this in here because this is actually talking about when they were done fighting, and now everyone was kind of idle. He has some idle people on their hands, but it related to discipline, so I wanted to lock it in a little bit. Back to the book. The battalion was no longer a combat unit, but a garrison outfit. It was more important to keep the troops gainfully employed to prevent boredom and monotony. That would lead to a breakdown in discipline, and when that occurs, soldiers get careless. Consequently, the first thing we organized were calisthenics and athletic programs. You know, I always joke about, you know, when people say they have some kind of problem, and I'm like, oh, do burpees.
Right.
Hey, you know what a good solution to all problems are? Calisthenics. Just start doing calisthenics. I like that. I like that attitude.
It'll help.
I vividly recall, this is another reason why I put this in. I vividly recall watching the men stripped to their waist or only wearing their shorts as they played baseball. The sight of all those scars made me conscious of the fact that only a handful of men in the battalion had been lucky enough to make it through all 4 campaigns without at least one scar. Some men had 2, 3, or even 4 scars on their chest, back, arms, or legs. Keep in mind that this was after the war, so I was looking only at men who were not seriously wounded. Next, we set up rifle ranges and sharpened our marksmanship. Close order drill and troop reviews were once again back on the training schedule. I also established a schedule where each of our 4 platoons could rotate every 72 hours to a ski lodge in the Alps for rest and relaxation. The purpose of using this retreat was to let the men get away from the routine of a military schedule. So first of all, when I got to SEAL Team 1, and actually it wasn't when I first got there, but there was a Master Chief at SEAL Team 1 that had showed up in 1971 or 1972 to SEAL Team 1. And SEAL Team 1, you know, you had 150 guys roughly on the team at that time. And they had 34 killed in action in Vietnam at SEAL Team 1. And wounded was, I don't know how many wounded, but it was a lot. But this guy who was a Master Chief when I met him, and he was telling me that when he, you know, at the SEAL team, you PT in the morning, just like a sports team. You get to work and you work out. And he's a new guy, right? And they PT and then they go in the shower, you know, to wash off, and it's the same thing. He's like looking at every single guy's scarred up, wounded, you know, slashes on their chest, bullet holes in them, and he kind of was saying to himself, "Damn, you know, this has been trial by fire for these guys." But beyond that, what he's talking about here clearly is, if you, and I'll tell you this, especially with, you know, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old males that have joined the military, if you don't find something for them to do productive, they're going to find something to do that's not going to be productive. It'll be fun for them. Yeah. It'll be fun for them. They're going to have a good time, but it's not, there's a chance that they could be doing something better than what you're letting them do. Now, of course, he talks about the fact that he's still giving them time to go out to the ski lodge and break away from it a little bit, but you just got to be careful on how you do that. You got to be careful on how you do that. It can backfire if you're not careful. And the first time I was ever kind of detached from a SEAL platoon it was when I went to training, the training department at SEAL Team 1, what we used to call training cell, which sounds legit. And it was legit. Sure. So at training cell, the first trip I went on with a platoon, because I was always in the platoon. So the first trip I went on with the platoon, and I was outside of the platoon, and I was, you could say I was an instructor, even though we weren't running around calling ourselves instructors. We would call ourselves actually the cadre. I don't know why. It was just like, oh yeah, cadre.
Sounds dope.
Yeah.
Wait, that's an official term though,
It
right?
is an official term. Yeah, cadre, the training cadre. Yeah. So when we were at training cell, because the instructors are kind of considered the buds instructors, the guys are at the basic training, and we didn't really want to be buds instructors. We were the cadre.
Hell yeah.
So, and I didn't make, this is just my own assessment. I didn't make up cadre. I didn't call ourselves cadre. I didn't make up training cell. I wish I would have made up all those things, but I just flowed into them as a lucky young new guy. Or actually, at this point, I wasn't a new guy anymore.
Wait, but it's true though, right? It's not like you just gave yourself a title that wasn't.
No. We were the cadre. Training cadre. Yeah. Hey, I need to talk to the guys in the cadre over here. Yeah, that's what we called ourselves.
Right. Oh, yeah. So it's like when, like let's say you open a jiu-jitsu gym, and then you're teaching people, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I'm the instructor. And then you say, you know what, I like professor. That's better.
Yeah. No, it wasn't that.
It's not that.
I didn't make that. No. They called. For years. And actually, I think Roger Hayden talked about it when he was on the podcast. He was talking about when he was cadre. So it's been around forever.
Right. That's why I just like professor. It's like, it's true.
Yeah, it's
you are the
thing.
Professor, but it's like, it's just better. It sounds better. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that one.
Just go with cadre.
Yeah. I like cadre.
I don't even know what I was talking about. Oh, so I was in the cadre for the first time. And we went on a trip. We went to a trip where they have good times to be had where we were. It was a place where there was some good training, but there was also good times. And I picked this up from Harley Flanagan, this term which I hadn't really heard, wilding. Did you hear him say that? He's like, we were just wilding.
Yeah,
which I think is a better term than the term that we discussed, which was partying. Right? Oh, there's good. Yeah, we were partying. Yeah, I like wilding better because that entails all kinds of other things.
A little bit more wild. Yeah,
a little bit more wild.
Yeah, wilding out, or what they say, wilding out.
I never really heard it. I never really heard it before. But when Harley said, clearly you know what it is.
Yeah.
And it's in his book too. He talks about wilding. So we went to this place with a SEAL platoon where there was good training and good wilding to be had. And I remember the first time that these guys, we get there, we work a little bit, and then they're going to go out into the town. And I remember thinking to myself, they'd been in the field for a few days, and they were all fired up, young frogmen. And I was thinking to myself, how is this even going to work? Like, there's no possibility of this going well. And it did, everyone went fine. But you just see all these guys, they're ready to explode. And they've been in the field, they've dehydrated, they've been in the field for 4 days or 5 days, they're all dehydrated, and they completed their operation, they feel good about it, now you're going to let them out in town, and it's... Yeah, you got to be careful in those scenarios. You got to put something. Yeah, we would, sometimes you just say, hey, look, do whatever you want tonight, but we're PTing tomorrow at 0700. So then everyone knows they can wild to a point, but they can't. They got to put some kind of a governor on the scenario. Time. Here's a cool piece where Dick Winters, he talks about, and I've talked about this before, but just a piece about his view of what America was doing at the time. Back to the book. The United States went to war not to conquer territory or to subject their fellow man, but merely to liberate a conquered people from the chains of tyranny. There is a certain nobility in all that. Today we are bombarded in the news media about how everyone hates America and how this country is deployed around the world. World War II wasn't like that. And I am proud to be a part of it. So, again, I've said this a bunch of times. We went there and lost hundreds of thousands of people in Europe and in the Pacific Theater. And we took nothing. We only gave. Some thoughts on leadership from Dick Winters. Leadership's defining quality is honesty. To honesty, add fairness and consistency. I was able to develop a sixth sense during the war that allowed me to size up a situation rapidly. I could look at terrain and be able to see opportunities instead of challenges. By leading from the front, I believe I achieved a high degree of success. So I thought this was a very, very interesting combination. Honesty, fairness, and consistency. You don't hear those a lot about being a great leader. I always talk about the number one attribute of a leader is humility. And I definitely believe that humility is important, but honesty, that's clearly a thought and a concept of leadership that I think that misses a lot of people. I think, and we've talked about plenty of cases on the podcast here where we say, oh, what if this is going on? And I say, look, you want to be honest with them. So I've definitely said that before, but I'm going to start saying it more because I'm learning a little something from Dick Winters today. But I remember we had a case where someone was saying, hey, I'm going to leave this job or I'm going to take another job, and what should I do? Should I tell them? Should I not?
Yeah.
And we kind of went around, and I was like, look, just tell them the truth. Just say, look, hey, this is what's going on. I've got a better opportunity. I'm going to take it and in the long run, you're going to be better off if you're honest with people. And so obviously to think about this quality, it's something I've thought about, but not as clearly as this, as Dick Winters saying that's the defining quality. That's obviously important. Something that I will talk about more now. Definitely believed it, but we'll talk about it more. Now, if you've seen the movie Band of Brothers or the series Band of Brothers, they do a good job of showing the beginning when they form up, and there's a guy in leadership position called Captain Sobel. And he's not a good leader. And they do a good job of portraying why he wasn't a good leader in the series. But here's what Dick Winters had to say about it. Back to the book. Captain Sobel commanded through fear and intimidation. That is not how a leader should conduct himself. Sobel was not just unfair, he was mean-spirited. His attitude created a special bond within Easy Company that allowed the men to identify with their platoons more so than with the company, which is more normal in most military units. Second lieutenants, by their nature, are a clannish group. So you got a company commander, and then he's got usually three platoons underneath him, and each one of those is run by a second lieutenant. So these second lieutenants are the platoon commanders. Second lieutenants, by their nature, are a clannish group. Some are more serious than others, but for the most part, they wander around a military post, as General Eisenhower once said, in a rather aimless search for excitement. Easy Company's platoon leaders, of which I was one, did our best to take care of our soldiers, to soften Sobel's dictatorial behavior. I lost all respect for our commander the day he announced to the officers, in Easy Company, we will lead through fear, not by example. That's just the opposite of any leadership principle that I could ever conceive, is to lead through fear instead of example.
Kind of like when your dad, well, I don't know about your dad, but if your dad says, or if you say to your kids, do what I say, not what I do. You know that? You ever heard that before?
For sure. That's it. And if you want to put the fear onto that, it's do what I say, not what I do, or else. Yeah, I'm gonna get out the belt. Or the kids down south, they say, yeah, then I'm gonna get out the switch. Yeah, get out the switch.
My dad would say that, not all the time, but he said that before.
He said switch? Where was he from?
Dad's from Brooklyn, New York.
They ain't got no switches in Brooklyn, New York, I'm here to tell you.
On Kauai, they do.
On Kauai, they found some, huh?
He made me go get my switch. He said, go get a switch. I don't know what that means, by the way, at this point.
Oh, because you're a little kid.
Yeah.
Go get one.
And I'm from Kauai. They don't say switch, apparently. Other people say switch, so I didn't know, which made him kind of more mad.
So then he had to brief you on what a switch was?
Yeah, he didn't.
This is
that.
the thing I'm going to beat you with?
Yeah. It's kind of like digging your own grave in a way,
Very similar.
Conceptually, yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Back to the book. It made such an impression on me that I recorded his words in my diary. Under ordinary circumstances, a junior company officer attempts to reflect his company commander's leadership style. But Easy Company's lieutenants found that they simply could not emulate the image of Sobel and still live with themselves. Sobel had no friends within the company and few within the regiment. At the end of each day, he went one way and we lieutenants went another, hoping not to run into him at the officers' club. He lacked confidence in his own ability as an infantry commander. He was completely honest, but he couldn't read a map to save his neck. His knowledge of tactics and fire and maneuver was extremely poor. So, a horrible situation. And, this is one of those things where he's talking about how no one wanted to hang around with him, right? And I've heard leaders say, a good leader's not going to be liked or not going to be loved by everyone. And that's there's some truth to that, right? Of course, not everyone's going to love you. But there's also a difference when no one likes you.
Yeah.
That you're not doing a good job. You're not doing a good job at all. And, I hung out with all my guys all the time. through the chain of command. Everyone wanted to hang out. Let's go. Let's hang out. It wasn't running away from me at the end of work to escape.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah. Like one guy say, I'm not here to make friends.
Yeah, that's another classic, right? I'm not here to make friends. No, but I actually, I've heard officers say that in the military. SEAL officers, I've heard say, look, you, and they'll say like, hey, it's not a popularity contest, which it's not. Clearly, you're going to make decisions that are going to be hard for people to swallow. But to have people running away from you because they don't like you as a human being, that's not a good position to be in. You're not doing a good job as a leader. You need to reassess what you're doing and how you're doing it. And this is kind of reflective of what Dick Winter's attitude was. Back to the book. Easy company didn't belong to me. It belonged to the soldiers. I was privileged to be a small part of its history. Officers, and commanders in particular, are merely caretakers. That the paratroopers respected me is more than enough reward. So there's just totally different attitude, right? And there's something weird that happens with the military. You'll hear a guy, it's a contradictory state. There's a dichotomy. You'll hear a guy say, my soldiers.
Right.
Or my Marines. And there's two ways that can be taken. One of them is very positive. My soldiers. I am going to take care of my soldiers. Hey, don't come down here and talk to my soldiers like that.
Right.
Or, hey, I need to make sure my soldiers have the gear that they need. I need to make sure my Marines have. And they mean that in the best possible way. There's another side to that, which is completely negative, which is, these are my Marines. Meaning you own them, meaning I'll do what I want with them.
Right.
And so I've seen guys on both sides of that edge, and you can hear a good leader say my Marines, you can hear a good leader say my soldiers, you can hear a good leader say my SEALs, and think of it in a positive way, and you can have a crappy leader say my soldiers, my Marines, my SEALs, and you just think, dude, no. Stop. And so and especially when you get Dick Winters, who is universally respected in the military and definitely in his battalion and in his company, and he's a guy that's saying, look, it was theirs. That just tells you that's where your leadership perspective should come from.
Yeah. I always felt that a better way, instead of saying my, one of the few things as far as feelings go, because I experience that a lot when people be like, my this and that, and it's, I see what you're doing. It's like you're just the boss and the owner of all this kind of thing, kind of thing. But it felt like and feels like with people, like my soldiers, there is a lot of room for like, cause man, these are my brothers, my guys. But let's say if they're talking about like something else, like a big one. Like the bartenders I used to work with, every once in a while you'd have one and say, well, I got this in, my bar. And when they talk to the customers, they'll be like, hey, what kind of, vodka do you have? He goes, well, my best vodka is, this and that. And they'd say my, kind of like, I'm the master of this whole domain here. Everything here is mine and that I can bestow upon you kind of feeling. Yeah. Yeah, that always kind of.
Well, they do it definitely in the military with inanimate objects, not just soldiers and Marines and sailors. They do it with inanimate objects, and you learn that in boot camp where they say, "Why are you on my parade deck?"
Right. Yes.
And it gives you this feeling of like, "Dang, this guy's really into this parade deck," meaning where you do marching, and they say, "Get off my parade deck."
Yeah.
And it instills that kind of personal pride about something. So again, even that one can go both ways.
Yeah, I guess so.
I guess you really have to understand what your intent is behind what you're saying, and you have to be careful. I feel subconscious about that, and I'll give you an example. My gym.
Yeah.
Right? My gym.
Yeah.
When I talk about Victory MMA, which we have partners, and it's not solely my gym.
Yeah.
But it's my gym where I train, right? But sometimes someone will say something, and I'll feel like, "Oh, where do you train?" And I could say, I train at my gym. You know what I mean? I feel like a real turd when I do that. So I got, Victory MMA and Fitness, Oh, Dean Lister, Jeff Glover. Yeah, that's where I train. And, oh, wait, do you own that place? Yeah, I'm one of the owners,
right.
Blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, you don't like that. My.
Oh, you got to say.
Just be careful. Just be careful with it. Be careful with that, too.
I always thought if you said, our, especially even in a bartender situation, what we have, it's kind of like us as an establishment,
right.
Kind of thing. I'm part of that. When you say our, you're part of it, so it kind of still puts that forward. Like I'm kind of giving this to you or offering whatever. I'm taking some ownership, but it's like I'm not the boss of this thing. It kind of feels that way. That's what I always thought. So even if you, like in your situation, if you're like, someone say, hey, Jocko, where do you train? We say, well, at our gym,
Yeah.
And it's kind of ambiguous as well, which kind of seems more humble, where it's like, oh, yeah, you could be just a member, but at least you're part of that community, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, use our.
We'll gotta be careful.
That's what we're going to.
That's all I'm saying is you gotta be careful.
Yeah, fully.
Careful with my Marines, my soldiers. And again, sometimes that's the most positive thing you could possibly say. These are my SEALs. Hey, don't come down here and think you're going to put my SEALs out in the field in a bad situation. It's not happening. You know what I mean? You're protective. They're your brothers. You have ownership of them, but it's in the positive way.
Yeah.
As opposed to, look, I'll deploy my SEALs wherever I see fit. Like, oh, put a red flag on that dude's face.
Yeah. Right.
Back to the book. I think of Easy Company every day. We sustained 150% casualties between the night that we jumped into Normandy and VE Day. 150% casualties. For those of you that are wondering how you do that is you have people getting wounded multiple times and coming back to the front, and when your replacements show up, they get wounded too. So you've got 150 people in your company, and over the course of time, people get wounded and leave, and new people come in to take their place, and they get wounded as well, and that's how you get up over 100% of your people being wounded. The result of sharing all the stress throughout training and combat has created a bond between the men of Easy Company that will last forever. In a sense, I don't think I ever left Company E. I may never again see the type of men in this outfit, but to me, Easy Company will always be my company, in the sense that I will always remain a part of it. To this day, they remain my second family. I still look at these men with great respect I can't describe in words. So there, he makes it same thing. Like, he feels uncomfortable saying mine. He has to put a quantifier on it and explain, hey, not in that sense, but I'll always be a part of it. That's why it's mine. More about leadership. Back to the book. Leadership is difficult to define. They talk about leadership at West Point every day. Leadership starts with honesty, dedication, and having a man who is dependable and fair. If you never deviate from the standards that you established, men have faith in you, and you'll be out front to set the example. Sergeant Talbert once told me, "Sir, I'd follow you into hell." I take a great deal of pride in his remark. So again, we're getting this. Leadership starts with honesty, dedication, dependable, and fair. So important, being fair. And you see that a lot when it comes to doling out punishment when people make mistakes. Are you fair or not? Does that person really deserve to lose their pay for 90 days or go on bread and water or whatever kind of punishment you're going to bestow on someone? Is that fair? And people know if things are fair or not.
Yeah.
People know what's reasonable.
Hey, do you think that, when people say I'm going to make an example out of somebody, sometimes it's for different reasons. Maybe like, oh, I've been letting people slack, so I gotta make an example out of somebody to kind of reestablish the discipline kind of thing. Or maybe, as a boss or whatever, you really don't like this specific violation. Like it's just one of your things, so you can make an example for that reason. Do you think that that's fair?
It can be, but it's also a touchy subject. You tell me. I personally think, let's say I'd been given some slack and people have been showing up a little bit late, and I'm kind of like, hey man, we need to be a little more on time. And then finally on a Thursday, guy shows up late for the meeting, and I say, hey, you're suspended, you're grounded, you have to work this weekend. I punish them hard, super hard. that doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, it's not being consistent because people have been being late. However, if I was to say, hey guys, check it out, Bill just walking in right now and I've been letting it slide. And I'll tell you what, this is where it's getting us. We've been later and later. We start slacking here. We're going to start slacking in other places. We can't afford to slack right now. Our mission's too important. From now on, if you're late showing up to this meeting or you're late to an evolution that we're about to do, I'm going to drop the hammer.
Yeah.
So don't be late. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Fair warning, explanation as to why. That's fair, in my opinion. Just going off the handle and smashing someone because you want to make an example of them, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can it be useful? Yes. If there's a clearly delineated expectation that's been set and it gets violated for whatever reason and you are going to crush and destroy to set an example, and actually we're going to get to a point where he talks about that in here, there is an example set. Mm-hmm. And that has to send a message to everyone? Yeah, that can do that. I've done that with my family. You know, hey, here's the line. If you cross it, you will remember for a very long time that you made a bad decision. Yeah. And my other kids, when I've done that to one of my kids that has made a bad decision, they all remember. All of them. Yeah. They don't want to make that mistake.
Yeah, it seems like you
don't want to cross the line.
No, not at all. Like how you said, if you give them kind of ample warning, where you kind of give them the tools to make their own decision, kind of thing. Even if you are changing the policy or whatever, harsher punishments, all this stuff. As long as you warn them, like how you're saying, that seems like fair. And a huge one, which I always kind of thought was, if it applies to everyone. Like if this violation, this punishment for this violation applies to everyone. Sure, it just happens to be this guy because he happens to be the one that committed the violation or whatever. But this rule, this policy applies to everybody.
Yeah, and also when you explain these things, you don't blame them. If you notice, even when I just said, hey guys, I've been letting slack here. You don't say, look, you guys have been slacking. No, so look, I didn't make it clear why this is important. Yeah. And therefore, you guys have been, I've been letting you slack. You guys have been showing up late. That's a problem. We can't have that problem anymore. So you just don't start pointing the fingers at everyone. Yeah. And then hammering them with harsh punishments. No, not a good idea. Speaking of leadership, back to the book. I believe that some men and women are born with the inherent qualities that make them good leaders. Writing to his son, John, who was a cadet at West Point in 1943, General Eisenhower once said, "The one quality that can be developed by studious reflection and practice is the leadership of men." I agree with Ike. Leaders are not born. Leaders are made, and they are made by solid effort and hard work. So there's a little contradictory in there because he says, look, some people are born with qualities that make them a good leader, but you can learn to be a good leader. I totally agree with that. I've always said that. Some people have the qualities that make them a good leader naturally, or they will have some of them, right? Mm-hmm. Some of them will be really articulate. Some of them will be very charismatic, very dynamic, loud, have a lot of presence. Those are all characteristics that will differentiate in different people. And if you have a lot of those, you're going to have a naturally easier time being a good leader. Now, occasionally you get people that have some of those qualities, but they're idiots. And those are the worst because they can get people to follow them even though they don't know where they're going. Yeah. Those are bad situations. But it's interesting. Hard work, studying, right? Studying leadership. Today I already learned something. Need to increase my focus on honesty as a leadership quality. But yeah, I'm always studying, always learning, and we all need to be. That's how we're going to become a better leader. And a lot of the studying that I did when I was growing up in the teams was just, I was watching and thinking about why these leaders were doing what they're doing. What is making them do this? Good leader? Why do we respond to that well? Bad leader? Why don't we respond well to what he's doing? I wasn't sitting there consciously thinking about it. Actually, no, in some cases I was actually consciously thinking about it. Consciously thinking, wait, why does no one want to follow this guy? How is he acting that we all want to walk away from him? Why is that happening? And then when we get a good leader, I'd say, why is this guy such a good leader? So yeah, I guess I did consciously do that and study, not from books, but from life to try and learn. Yeah. And that's how you can become better. Here's a little note too. And you want to talk about holding the line. if you aren't in good physical shape, forget it. You are not going to be a good leader. Well, certainly in a military environment, that is true. Are there some civilian leaders that aren't in the best shape? Yeah, there are. Would those leaders be doing a better job if they were in better physical condition? Yes, they would. It's like that thing that starting strength, Coach Ripito says. I posted. I've never talked about it, but I posted. He's talking about how physical strength is good, and people that say that physical strength aren't good, he says, I forget the exact quote, but he's basically saying, I know physical strength is good, and if you take someone that says physical strength isn't good and isn't important, and then you add 120 pounds to their squat, and then ask them how they're doing now. They're going to be doing better.
Yeah.
They're going to be doing better. The more you can deadlift, the better you're going to feel. You don't feel worse when you can deadlift more. You don't feel worse when you can squat more. You feel better.
Yeah.
Well, why is that? There's a million reasons why. Confidence, overcoming the challenge. You're actually physically stronger. Your mental clarity goes up. So yeah, of course, be in good shape. Be in good shape. If you're worried about your health, you're not going to be able to focus on being a good leader. And in the military or in any job where that demands physical exertion, you have to be in good shape. Otherwise, people are looking at you and you're falling apart. You can't be falling apart on a patrol. You can't be falling apart during a combat swimming operation where you need to swim. You need to swim far. You're going to swim for 4 straight hours on a combat swimmer operation. If you're weak and you can't do that, you think your men are going to respect you? They're not. I'll go ahead and answer that question for you.
Yeah. Is that kind of like the hockey coach who doesn't even know how to ice skate?
There are coaches that have never participated in the sport that they coach, and they're good. You can look at Greg Jackson, who's a great mixed martial arts coach. He's never been a mixed martial arts fighter.
Yeah, but he knows how to fight, though,
Yeah, certainly does. Yes. But he hasn't actually fought. So how can he be a good coach? What about Duke Rufus? He's never fought MMA, has he?
Oh, MMA? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we know he's a champion kickboxer, but how can he be such a great coach at MMA?
Yeah, because you can connect the dots and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And, of course, there's exceptions to everything. But generally speaking, and plus you're talking about a little bit more of a broad thing, like a leader. Like, who are we going to, follow?
Yeah, and plus, because we're talking about coaches, coaches are not participating anymore. That's why they're coaching, right?
Yeah.
So I guess those are really stupid examples.
Yeah, as far as coaches go.
Because Customato with Mike Tyson, obviously he wasn't getting in the ring with Mike Tyson, right?
Yeah.
But he's a great coach, a fantastic coach, one of the most respected coaches of all time.
Yeah. And the results are a little bit more recognizable, like they're less ambiguous, like a leader's results, quote unquote.
Yeah, and we're looking at leaders in the field, like leaders in the job that are leading a group to accomplish a mission, right? That's different than a coach. A coach is outside the group.
Yeah.
So we're talking about someone that's in the group. Yeah, you got to be able to maintain. You got to be able to stay with your team physically. And it's not like you need to be the best. I was never the fastest guy. I was never the strongest guy. But I wasn't going to be falling behind on a patrol because I wasn't in good shape. That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And the only way that doesn't happen is you need to stay in shape. How do you stay in shape? Got to have discipline.
Yep.
Yeah. So these questions answer themselves at some point. Maybe some point this podcast will just come on here and sit here in silence.
Yep.
Good idea. Speaking of, this is good that you were talking about this. Here is a heavy punishment handed out. Talking about Colonel Bob Sink, who was the leader of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. Here we go. Back to the book. Colonel Bob Sink certainly was one of the best. He set high standards and never compromised on those standards. After the paratroopers of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment earned their jump wings, Sink granted a 10-day furlough, but cautioned the men to conduct themselves appropriately. Several paratroopers reported late for duty after their furloughs expired. Sink called another regimental formation and publicly humiliated one paratrooper from each of his 9 companies. They called out the name of the last soldier to report to duty, and that paratrooper was marched in front of the formation under escort. An officer stripped him of his unit patch, forced him to unblouse his boots, and then escorted him from the field. What Sink was saying was paratroopers may be elite, but they had to follow the Army's rules and regulations. I liked that. For some reason, Sink liked me, respected me. He was always the man instrumental in getting me my next job. So there's a heavy punishment. Now, that's a clear message being sent, right? Clear message being sent. And I bet Colonel Sink at that time weighed, he's got 9 companies, so he's got hundreds and hundreds of guys. And he's going to make an example out of 9 of them. And it's going to be a real clear example. And that's going to leave an impression on 1,000 guys, close to 1,000 guys. That might be worth it. And he probably judged that it was worth it.
Yeah.
So, interesting perspective.
Yeah. I guess the question is that fair?
I would say to the guys that got booted from the regiment, I'd say their thoughts were that it was unfair. I would say for the guys that remained in the regiment, that realized that they had to maintain the standard, that realized there was going to be no slack, and that worked hard to make sure they maintained that, and therefore were more prepared for combat, I'd say it was real fair.
Right. So bigger picture kind of thing. Yeah. They were kind of the martyr,
Yeah. Like it's a real big picture thing. And who knows what kind of behind the scenes. We'd have to get some details if we were really going to cast judgment on that. Like, maybe some of those guys were kind of slackers anyways.
Yeah.
And the company commander was like, hey, dude, we don't want this guy. Let's get rid of this guy or whatever,
Yeah.
And he only took certain members of the people that missed their furlough. That's not fair. He only took certain members or certain people that missed their furlough. Didn't take all of them. Yeah. Just the last one to report. We don't take that around here.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic.
Yep.
It's an interesting dynamic, but it's definitely showing. I don't know that I necessarily would have done that. Yeah. My assessment, I probably wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Not one guy from each company. Maybe like the 2 guys that grossly violated it. I don't think I would need to do 9.
Yeah.
But guess what? Colonel Sink did. Savage. Don't mess with Colonel Sink. And that's a good thing, little kind of image for you to have. Like, don't mess with Colonel Sink. Don't mess around in the battalion, in the regiment. We don't play. Another leader that he talks about here is McAuliffe. Back to the book. What we liked about McAuliffe was that he allowed us to do our jobs. You didn't have a lot of interference from McAuliffe. But with Taylor in command, this is another person, he told you what you needed to do here. He had to run everything. You can't do a good job if you don't have the chance to use your imagination and creativity. In my mind, Taylor was more interested in impressing his superiors than watching out for his men. Taylor was such a contrast with British General Montgomery. So he talks a little bit. Oh, okay. So first of all, clearly decentralized command. Don't give people the clear, specifics on how to do every little thing. Let them get creative. Let them come up with a solution. Perfect. Boom. We hear that over and over again. Why do we hear it over and over again? Because it's right. That's why we hear it over and over again. Now he talks about the famous British General Montgomery, Monty, who always gets portrayed a little bit stiff and a little bit British, right? And he says in here that the writers didn't know him, didn't see him on the battlefield, didn't see what he was like. And here's what he says. Here's what Dick Winter said about Montgomery. Back to the book. Montgomery was the real deal. I saw him on a number of occasions, and he always impressed me as a commander who lived the lifestyle that was beyond reproach for his staff to follow. He set the example. He addressed every division that was scheduled to participate in the invasion. He called us together and had every soldier take off his helmet so he could see the troops better. Yeah, props to Monty, right? Going around and talking to every single division, and then said, hey boys, take off your helmets. I want to see your faces before you roll. It's legit. Props. There's, this book, a lot of this book is about self-discipline.
Sure.
Even this part right here, back to the book. Self-discipline keeps you doing your job. Without it, you lose your pride and forget the importance of self-respect in the eyes of your fellow men. Pride keeps you going on. This is what I feared I would lose, the loss of the will to measure up to my men. So once you say, you know what, I don't care what my guys think anymore, you've lost it, right? Mm-hmm. If I say, look, I don't care what the guys think of me, think of what a driving force it is to have your team looking at you and saying, I'm going to make sure these guys respect me and I'm proud of what I'm doing, compared to I don't care what anyone thinks of me anymore. And you can see, well, you can see when this happens to people, not just in the military or a business organization, but in life.
Yeah.
In life. At a certain point, you see a bum in the street. At a certain point, that bum said, you know what, I don't care what anyone thinks of me anymore.
Yeah.
I don't care what my family thinks of me. I don't care what the society thinks of me.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not talking about every single bum, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't care.
Generally the thing.
And as soon as you see that, you can imagine that's just like a life thing, right?
Yeah.
If you go through life and you say, don't care what anyone else thinks, which is a contradiction for me, right? Because I'll say all the time, like, I don't care what people think.
Yeah, but that's to a degree. Like and it's obvious, and just put a little bit of thought into, you don't care about what people think, well, as it appears. You don't care what people think on a superficial level, on a profound level. True. You do. That's why that's why part of your morality is like, fairness, doing the right thing, all this discipline stuff. It's for you, but in regards to social cues and all these things like that, that's beneficial to your success, to function in a society.
Yeah, and I've said this before, like about the SEAL teams and me being in the SEAL teams, and I completely had this attitude. I don't care, like for instance, I don't care what happens. Like I don't care if I get fired. I'm going to do the right thing. I don't care what they think of me. And at the same time, there's nothing that was more important to me than my reputation in the SEAL teams. I don't want, if something was going to give you a bad reputation, like what we just talked about, if you fall out of a patrol as a leader or as anyone, like if you fall out of a patrol, no one's ever going to forget it in the SEAL teams. If you're too weak to do something, you're going to be remembered by that forever. And I didn't want that ever. Yeah. To be like, oh, Jocko did this. Jocko couldn't finish the patrol. Jocko was a bad leader. I didn't want that to be the reality.
Yeah. And
so therefore you work hard, you stay in shape, you do your best all the time.
Yeah.
And that drives you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wasn't saying, oh, I'm concerned what my boss thinks of me, so I'm going to act a certain way. No, I was trying to do the right thing.
Right.
For the teams,
right?
By the way.
See what I'm saying? No, like these are all
platoons.
Those are all fundamental things.
Yeah, it's a weird balance though to say, look, I don't care if I get promoted, but I care more than anything about my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that definitely was my attitude.
Right.
That definitely was my attitude my whole time I was in the military. Look, I'm going to do the best job I can. I'm not doing it to get promoted. I'm not doing it for that reason.
Yeah.
But I am part of it, absolutely doing it to have the respect of my peers and my bros in the teams.
Right.
Your reputation, you hear that all the time. Your reputation is everything in the SEAL teams because it's a small group of people. Yeah. You have an accidental discharge with your weapon, everybody knows about it and they're going to know about it forever. If you remain on the teams for whatever reason, after you have an accidental discharge, everyone's going to know it from there on out. Yeah. And it's not fun. That's why we got some jacked up nicknames in the SEAL teams. Because you're going to get nicknamed after your lowest point in your life. Your biggest mistake is what you're going to get nicknamed. Or your biggest, Like there was a guy, and his nickname was Bush, and he's a great dude. Mm-hmm. His nickname was Bush. It had nothing to do with his last name. But anyways, long story short, when he was a new guy, and I knew him, this is 15 years later, I found this out. He'd been in the SEAL teams for 15 years. I'd known him as Bush the whole time. And he was parachuting. Brand new guy, showed up to the team. They're like, hey, you're going jumping today. Okay, gets in the aircraft, jumps, and he lands through no fault. You can't even steer these round parachutes. You can't barely steer them. He lands in a bush with like thorns in it, right? And I guess it looked pretty funny. And from there on, what's his name? Bush. Yeah. So you're going to get a name like that. But that's a really easy example because everybody knows, hey, that's just funny. It was more of a funny thing. If something funny happens to you, you might get that nickname too. Like if you get pepper sprayed by the cops, you might have the nickname Pepper. Which
I like how direct it is.
Yeah, there's no sense in playing around. What else are you going to call someone that gets pepper sprayed by the cops when they're a new guy? You're going to call him Pepper.
You call him Wet Eye or something.
Wet Eye?
Yeah, because your eyes get all watery after you get pepper
You're not
sprayed.
going to be in charge of nicknames over here.
Remember your guy that you thought's name was Al?
Yeah.
But it was Owl?
Yeah, Big Al 50 Cal. Not even his name.
Yeah.
Not even his name, Big Al 50 Cal. Yeah.
That's good.
Morphed. Is that awesome? So that's why you have this weird dichotomy that's pulling at you. Is just you're looking at your friends, your peers in a leadership position. It's your men. You're looking at your men saying, "Hey, I don't want to let these guys down. I don't want them to view me as weak."
Yeah.
Weak's a bad word, but I guess it's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Not that I want to maintain the image of strength, because part of maintaining the image of strength is by showing weakness and being like, I say this all the time. Hey, I don't know how to do this. Hey, can you give me a suggestion? I'm not talking about that type of thing. I'm talking about physical weakness, physical and mental toughness, or physical and mental weakness, right? That's a lot different than, hey, I don't understand how to do something, or it's a lot different than humility. You can want to maintain strength, but still have humility for sure.
Yeah.
I know all kinds of, I know tons of guys that are completely humble, but they're the toughest bastard you'd ever want to know, mentally and physically. So I'm not talking about I need to be strong, stronger than everyone. No, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about physical and mental toughness you have to have. And if you don't have them as a leader, could be problematic.
Yeah.
Watch out for it. Back to the book. The big thing I derived from combat was the necessity of maintaining discipline. Discipline in our troops and getting the job done in combat. So clearly, discipline's a big part of what we're talking about here. Gee, I wonder why. Now, this is talking another little aspect that, I don't talk about this a lot. I think it's inherent in a lot of things that I say, but it's not something that I don't use this word a lot. And again, I think I need to use it more. Back to the book. Character revolves around doing the right thing all the time. Character implies daily choices of right over wrong. The cadet prayer at West Point says cadets strive to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and never to be content with a half truth when the whole can be one. That gets to the heart of character. I would add that it is easier to do the right thing when everyone is looking. It is more difficult to do what you should do when you are alone. I like to think of character as every other virtue at the breaking point. So character, doing the right thing. Doing the right thing at all times. Doing the right thing when you're alone.
Yeah.
Back to the book. War doesn't alter character. War merely brings out the best that an individual has to offer. Unfortunately, it also brings forth the worst in some men. If anything, war exposes the best and worst of those who are called to fight. I know of no man who lacked character in peace and then discovered character in combat. So I've said this same type of thing before, especially, war, what we'd see on deployment is as pressure starts to build on people, you start seeing people go in two directions. And that's what we'd see. Their character would start to reveal itself. They'd either get they'd rise to the occasion, or they would not. And they'd go in the other direction. They'd become worse. Their character would become worse, or their character would become better. That's what I've seen. And the same thing, when we talk about people that maybe have a hard time dealing with war, a lot of times there's some pre-existing issues that the war inflames, right? And then if you take someone that doesn't have pre-existing issues, or maybe has a positive spin on things, that becomes more positive. So it's and then there's a bunch of people in the middle. But some of the guys that I knew that really had a hard time, they had issues going in. You know, they had problems, some issues going into the situation, going into war, and those problems get exacerbated by the pressure and the stress of combat. So we need to watch out for that one. Yeah, I think war is more of an amplifier than a creator. I think it amplifies good character. I think it amplifies bad character. I think it amplifies issues, and in either direction. So it's a powerful element to add into people's lives. This big, intense piece. Now, one of the things that this book captures is these letters. He kind of had a pen pal, a female pen pal when he was at war. Her name was Dieta Allman. And one of the things that so they capture these letters, and parts of some of the letters are published in here. Here's one of them. Back to the book. First and most important, I've got my own conscience to answer to. Next, my parents, and then I am an officer in the U.S. Army. I am damn proud of it, and with the rank and position I hold, I wouldn't think of doing anything to bring discredit to my outfit, my paratrooper boots, wings, the airborne patch, or the U.S. Army. Good morale within an outfit is usually reflected by good conduct away from it. That sounds like an idealistic high school kid, I know, but that's it. That's how I feel. So he took that stuff very, very seriously. And I remember back in the day, pre-war, I was in my 3rd platoon, and the new guys, who are all my bros now, I mean, these are just mugs, but they were new guys, and we were the senior older guys, right? Because we'd been in the teams for like a couple years. And something happened, and we gave like, hey guys, don't ever make the platoon look bad. Like, no matter what, you don't make the platoon look bad. That's not allowed. The platoon comes first above everything. And this one, I just remember saying, but then one guy made the platoon look bad, and he had to pay for it. But that's the attitude. The attitude was like, look, you don't make the platoons look bad. You don't make the teams look bad. We weren't too concerned with the Navy back then. We didn't really even feel like, when I was that young in the SEAL teams, we weren't even thinking about the big Navy. We barely even recognized it. We were in the teams. It's more, as the teams became bigger and more prevalent, we connected more with the big Navy. But when I was a new guy when I was in the SEAL teams as a young guy in the 90s, we were pretty much on our own. So I wasn't like sitting there thinking, hey, I need to protect the reputation of the Navy. I didn't care. Right. I would now. As I got older, I did. Yeah. But back in the day, it was like, hey, the platoon. And I was at Team 1 at the time, and Team 1. Don't make Team 1 look bad. What are you doing? Don't make this platoon look bad. You just did that? Yeah. Now you have to pay for that. Punishment will be delivered at this time. And it was. That's a unfortunate situation. You know, these things just happen from time to time.
So are we not going into what the punishment was that day?
The punishment... The punishment was... I'll tell you what the punishment was.
Jocko punishment.
The punishment was, I am going to strike you 2 times in the face with an open hand. That's your punishment. Or we're going to fight. Which one do you want? That was the punishment.
Yeah.
And this guy was like, I'll take the 2.
Yeah.
And I was like, roger that. And there was a little bit more tension than that, you know?
Yeah, fully. That's
because
really
he was kind of like bowed up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, if you want to get it on, we'll get it on.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny because these guys, this group of guys they were all guys just trying to get after it and be good team guys, but we were just crazy, you know, at this point. And the teams was literally everything in my life. So when I was like mad about disrespecting or making the platoon look bad, it like hurt me.
Yeah.
I was that crazy that I just didn't want the platoon to look bad.
Yeah.
You know, and you did something that made the platoon look bad.
Yeah.
It bothered me. It really, truly bothered me. You made something that made Team 1 look... I mean, I'd been there, you know, since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was everything to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you made us look bad, I wasn't happy. And not just I wasn't happy because I was a jerk, or I wasn't happy because I was being a jerk at the time. But talking to these guys, years later, we talk to these guys, they're like, yeah, that guy in particular, he's like, I hated going to work. I hated you guys. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, And then they'll be like, but I'm glad it was like that. Because everybody has that feeling. It was the old school. It was like with the old breed,
right.
Hey, this is the way it is. We hold the line.
Mm-hmm.
We don't make the platoon look bad. We make the platoon look good. We work hard. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a little gang.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
Yeah, that's crazy, those two choices, because they're like, they're just different. Because some people would rather go do the fight because, at least they kind of go down swinging kind of attitude. But the potential for damage is way more in a fight. You know what I'm saying? But and then
actually, I agree with you, and you could see where you could make a case for both of those selections. But there's also something cool. It's like, I'll take 2 hits to the face. Yep. Open hand, cool. I'm a man. I screwed up. I think that's the reason I respected it was because it was like, yeah, I did screw up.
Right. So I'll just take it.
And I'll take it. I deserve punishment. Give it to me.
Yeah.
And that was that.
Yeah. Well,
and then we move on. No factor.
Yeah, technically the 2 to the face is way easier because it's way quicker. You know what to expect, kind of thing. I mean, unless you're scared of like, hitting your head and dying or some some off.
They were open hand though. They were open hand.
Yeah. See, so
you're not going to knock anybody out with an open hand. Right?
Yeah. Well,
usually you're not.
Maybe I could, but I'm just kidding. But so a lot of that is like that, how you say you were kind of building some tension with it. It's like that's a big part of the punishment as well, that psychological like torture,
also,
turmoil.
And this also reveals my own personal immaturity, right? This is it. Like, seriously, this is when I'm thinking about it, this is just an immature, I was probably 22 years old, maybe 23 years old, but, young and immature. And not getting the best guidance, not understanding things, not understanding that I wasn't helping build a cohesive unit, not understanding that this guy's probably thinking, I don't want to help him. And you know what I mean? It wasn't smart. I'm not trying to say that this stuff was smart. I'm telling you the reality of the way it was. And the way it was in my head was, hey, this is my life. Yeah. This SEAL platoon, I know it sounds crazy. This SEAL platoon that we're in is my whole life, and I actually don't care about anything else. Mind you, this is in the 90s. There's no war going on. Yeah. I'm just a young, crazy kid, and the only thing I know and the only thing I care about is the SEAL teams. Mm-hmm. And, you make the platoon look bad. This platoon is my life, and you just made us look bad. And I can't stand that. And I don't want it to be that way. So young, immature me, what do? Hey, there's got to be punishment, and that's kind of the attitude we had. And there are some benefits to it, but it's outweighed. If I would love to go back and be a better mentor and be like, hey man, this is the mistake you made. We need to make. I would love to do that, but you can't. Yeah. I was a young, dumb kid that was raised that way, by the way, as well. That's how we were raised. Yeah. And there are some benefits to it. And like I said, even those guys that did platoons with me when I was quote unquote an old guy, even though we were nothing, we'd never been to combat, we were meaningless, but we had a couple more years in the SEAL team. So therefore you're an old guy, and the new guys are anyone with no deployments, which is actually pathetic in its own right, because the term in the SEAL teams being, you're a new guy, that was from guys that were in Vietnam. That you hadn't been in combat yet, you're a new boy. You're a cherry boy. So guess what? I was a cherry boy for 13 years because I never shot my weapon at the enemy. I hadn't been in combat until I went to my first deployment to Iraq. So it was actually, from that perspective, it's embarrassing because here I was big. I'm an old guy. I wasn't an old guy. I'd never been in combat before. What am I talking about? Yeah. But you take what you had at the time, which was this organization, the SEAL teams, my platoon, and again, I can't describe really how important the SEAL platoon was to me. It was, let me put it this way. It was my whole life.
There you go.
What did I do when I woke up in the morning? Went into work, worked out with my SEAL platoon mates. What do we do then? We worked all day. What do we do for lunch? We ate together. What do we do at night? We went and got dinner. What do we do after that? We went and had drinks. What do we do after that? We hung out all night. What do we do after that? We went to sleep, woke up and did the same thing day after day. That was my family. Yeah. And you just have this passion for your family, and it was the most important thing in the world to me for my whole adult life.
Yeah,
but
man.
when you take that and you put that on a young kid,
Yeah.
and everyone's like, oh yeah, Jocko's he's a big reader. I wasn't reading anything back then. I was reading the platoon handbook, right? I wasn't reading. I wasn't reading Shakespeare.
Sure.
Yeah. What was I doing in high school? I wasn't paying attention during high school. I was wanting to be a commando. I was running through the woods pretending I had a machine gun.
There you go.
So you take that kid and you put him in a situation where the thing that he cares about the most has been
scorn,
violated, or scorned. He's going to try and handle it to the best of his ability.
Start slapping people.
So again,
I get
not proud of it, but occasionally some people got slapped around.
Yeah, that's how though. When you're a young basic guy, you're gonna handle things in a young basic kind of way.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever.
It's caveman. Yeah. It's caveman scenario.
There you go.
And the other thing is, and those guys that were in those early platoons when I was, like I said, a quote unquote old. Years later, they're like, yeah, that was awesome. So glad I got raised that way. They're proud of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I look back on it, I know I was not a good leader, right? Yeah. By any stretch.
Yeah, that's kind of like when I look at my old videos. At the time I'm like,
good.
They were dope. But you're like, you just know better ways now. You're just better now.
Yeah.
Hindsight 2020.
Yeah, and then the other thing you got to be careful of is setting the bar. Like, let's say I was in a SEAL platoon right now, and now I'm going to set the bar so high that I lose track of lose vision of the fact that, like, hey, the guy that I'm trying to convince right now is a 23-year-old thing, and the most important thing in his world is this. Is funny. Like, I was talking to someone the other day, and I was like, I couldn't remember what SEAL platoon, what the phonetic letter of a certain SEAL platoon I was in at a certain time. Mm-hmm. I was like, I forget what platoon that was.
Yeah.
And to me, at the time, when we were in those SEAL platoons, that letter of that phonetic alphabet, we were in an alpha platoon. That was it. And now I look back, and it's like, oh yeah, what platoon was that? Because as I matured and as I saw the rest of the world, I realized that even though a SEAL platoon is very important, and certainly it's the most important thing when you're in it, when you're in a task unit or you're overseas and there's multiple people running around and there's huge missions going on, your mind gets opened up.
Yeah.
And you see more. And the little thing that you used to be so engulfed in your head becomes less. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Now I'm telling you, guys in the SEAL platoons, there's no better job. Like, it's the best thing in the world. And I'm sure, I never served in a Marine Corps infantry platoon or in a U.S. Army infantry platoon, but I saw them. Yeah. I saw what they were like, and they have that same, bond that you get from being in those tough units. So there's something very cool about that, about being a grunt.
Yeah,
which is what you are in the SEAL teams. You might think, I'm a special operations or whatever. You're a grunt. You carry a machine gun.
Yeah, and
you do hard things. That's what being a grunt is. You're doing hard things. You're carrying a bunch of weight around.
Mm-hmm.
Love those days. Love those days.
Yeah, man.
All right. So, I just want to be back in the SEAL team right now so bad.
Yeah, I can kind of
tell. So fun, so awesome.
Yeah,
so awesome, so meaningful.
I would have fought you.
Yeah,
straight up.
Yeah, it would have been. What would have happened? You know what would have happened?
I don't know, bro. Wait.
That was one of the good things about knowing a little tiny bit of jiu-jitsu, which I actually knew a little bit, and that was enough.
Yeah, you can offer to fight guys with confidence. Because what if you offer to fight them and they kick your ass? You're like, dang, that backfired.
And here's the thing: they didn't know any better. All they thought was I don't think I ever said, like, I know jiu-jitsu and you don't.
Right.
But it was just, I was so confident, like, oh, I actually know this and I know that I can choke this dude, that they just said, oh, you know what, this guy's probably gonna kick my ass.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, there's probably guys along the way that could have kicked my ass. Some kid that wrestled in high school, all double leg, boom, and now I'm slammed on the ground and getting punched in the head. I can't, it's
lesson not learned.
Yeah, lesson not learned. Dang. I'm lucky that never happened.
I know.
So, check. All right. Here we're talking about, so I just was talking about, this is interesting. So I was just talking about mental strength and physical strength. Well, here we go. Back to the book. Moral courage is a far rarer commodity than physical courage. In that, I agree with Patton. I have known many officers who were physically brave, but who did not have the intestinal fortitude to organize the chaos around them. Those officers who were the most vocal about what they were going to do to the enemy often were the first to fall apart when the chips were down. Fear is not only debilitating, but its existence also destroys the cohesion of a command. It is the responsibility of a commander to identify the limits of courage, break the paralysis of fear, and motivate his soldiers to continue with the mission. Courage conquers fear. I like just that part, and I don't think I did this in Helmet for My Pillow. There was a part in Helmet for My Pillow that I pulled out when I was talking to one of my SEAL buddies, and because he listened to it, he said, yeah, and I was telling him this one part that I didn't put in the podcast, and I sent him a picture of it from the book, this little paragraph. But it's basically one of the drill instructors was all yelling about, we're going to kill and blah, blah, blah. And then he says, yeah, the next time I saw him, we were on island in the fight, and he was getting taken away after breaking down. Dang. So this is what he's saying here. A lot of guys that are the loudest about what they're going to do to the enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You're talking a big game, you know. But what's really good, you know where else that happens? UFC.
Yeah.
Right?
MMA, yeah.
MMA, it happens. Yeah. I'm gonna crush that guy. And the other guy's sitting there going, okay, bring it.
Yeah. Or he's in the locker room like explaining to all his teammates, yeah, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and it's almost like, it's weird.
They're trying to convince themselves. Yeah. So that's what's going on here. Same thing, right? Somebody that's trying to convince themselves, they're not confident in themselves.
Yeah.
Back to the book. I suspect every soldier at one time or another experiences a degree of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the willingness to rise above fear and do the things you know need to be accomplished. All soldiers hope that they will measure up the first time they get into a fight. I certainly was no exception, but I believe I had prepared myself very well that once I came under fire, I knew instinctively what needed to be done. I think I was more apprehensive, particularly before D-Day, than I was afraid. Maybe apprehension is the first stage of fear. I'm not really sure. You have to remember that Easy Company was an elite unit, as were all paratroopers. We had trained for nearly 2 years before we jumped into Normandy. I think I saw far more excitement in the eyes of my men than I did fear. After Brecourt, we felt as if we were seasoned veterans, even though we knew worse days were ahead. Yeah. That apprehension, and definitely my first deployment to Iraq, when you had all these guys, bro, the guys were so fired up to do real missions and get after it, that I think it was much more excitement than it was fear, especially in the beginning. And in the beginning, there wasn't a lot of casualties going on. We were kind of dominating.
Right.
And, even showing up to Ramadi, same thing. Guys were like, sign me up. What mission? I'm going.
Yeah.
And the more you spend time in that, the more you realize what the threat is, and you start losing guys or having guys getting wounded. That's when you start saying, okay, wait a second. I'm not sure I want to die today. Yeah. And then guys got to overcome that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Speaking of fear, Steve Ambrose, who's a military historian, written a bunch of books, including Band of Brothers. Steve Ambrose says that heavy artillery bombardment will make even the most seasoned veteran eventually break. I disagree. A leader has to overcome fear, convince himself that every enemy shell or bullet is not targeting him. The same is true in a company or a battalion. Leaders must ensure that strength and cohesion is a stronger force than fear. This is especially true in men who have been scarred by prolonged combat. Ambrose was correct when he titled the chapter in Band of Brothers Breaking Point, as he describes the horrendous artillery barrage that inflicted so many casualties on Easy Company in the Bois Jacques. Company strength was below 50%, and many of the non-commissioned officers were killed or wounded. Without direct supervision by leaders, Easy Company, as well as the remainder of the battalion, could have easily been debilitated by an increased sense of morality and fear. That is precisely why I made it a point to visit the front lines as often as possible. Soldiers need a sense that their leaders and commanders are in the game with them. Leadership by example is even more important in these situations. I noticed that when men are at the edge of their physical endurance, you tend to develop that 1,000-yard stare that you always read about. Tired soldiers will often take off their helmet and run their fingers through their hair. I've talked about that before, and I talk about that quite often now. At times, they literally drop their helmets on the ground. This soldier is already losing his self-respect. The battle is half lost. That's a sign for the commander to take immediate action. I didn't wait for the trooper to reach that stage. I proactively looked for these signs. Every soldier wants to do the right thing. You always know the proper thing to do, but doing it is sometimes more difficult. I never wanted a man to lose his self-respect. That's what I was talking about earlier, this idea of self-respect. When you don't care, because you get supposed to keep your gear on all the time. That's like just the code, right? You keep your gear with you all the time. You keep your gear on all the time. The minute you take that off is where you start, hey, I don't care what these guys think anymore. Something has happened that has made you say, you know what, I don't care what these guys think anymore. And that's not good.
Yeah.
And again, this is such a contradiction because, we can sit here and talk about like, hey, I don't care what people think. And I mean that. You shouldn't care what people think. But at the same time, it should be extremely important to you what people think and what your comrades think. And that's such a weird dichotomy. I don't think I've fully wrapped my hands around how to describe that yet and what that means. I'll get there eventually, hopefully.
Sure.
But that is a very important thing. And I've always felt like I don't care what people think. But at the same time, I deeply care what my peers think and my men think. Weird dichotomy.
Yeah, I think that's a core values thing, though. It's like you have these core values, and that's what you care about. What you think about it, what everyone else thinks about it, and then anything beyond that is just superficial fluff. Like if you don't match your socks or something like this.
I think what the key principle here, or the part that may help bring this together for me, is I want to be doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I'm doing the right thing and people say, oh, Jocko's, that's stupid what Jocko's doing, or he shouldn't be doing that. But I know in my heart I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue doing it. I don't care what you think.
Yeah. There you go.
But at the same time, if I know I'm doing the right thing and other people are judging me, that's going to keep me in line. Let me rephrase that. If I feel like I'm going to do the wrong thing, I do care what people think.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to think, oh, Jocko's getting weak, getting soft, getting, whatever.
Yeah.
He's doing the wrong thing. He's making the wrong move.
Mm-hmm.
Very strange. That's the dichotomy of leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or one of them. Actually, it's not really the dichotomy of leadership. That's just a dichotomy in life.
Yeah, life, yeah.
Now there's a guy named Lieutenant Compton who kind of breaks a little bit, and they show it in the Band of Brothers movie, and Dick Winters talks about it here. Back to the book. Before you go on, I know you think I'm too hard on Lieutenant Compton for walking off the line at Bastogne. Let me explain myself. Buck, that's Lieutenant Compton, was nicknamed Buck, and he walked off the line. Buck was a great combat leader. He was a superb platoon leader in Normandy and Holland. In fact, I would say he was one of the best. At Bastogne, he broke after some of his friends were seriously wounded in the constant artillery barrages. There is a danger of getting too close to the men, and Buck crossed that line. When you see your friends getting maimed, it makes it more difficult to go on. That's why I always maintained a certain detachment from the paratroopers in Easy Company. Am I too harsh on Buck? Maybe, but a leader needs to rise above fear. The easiest thing to do is quit. And then the author asks, why didn't you crack? And Dick Winters' response is, I'm Pennsylvania Dutch. I don't quit. I made a commitment. Moral courage is based on physical fitness. Courage is a combination of willpower and determination. I was in excellent physical shape. I don't think there was a man in that outfit who was in better shape than I was, and it showed. I had trained hard. In England, after we finished training, I would run at night. Blackout conditions, but I would run. Then I'd come in and go to bed. I was in maximum shape. That was the physical side of things. But there is a mental aspect of stamina as well. I've always prided myself that I do my own thinking. I have my own philosophy. I have my own answers to the reasons things have turned out in my life. By taking full accountability for my life, I've been able to meet the standards that I set for myself. I don't know any other way of saying it. Every commander must take full accountability for his actions. Stand up and be counted. As a commander, you are accountable for everything that your outfit does or fails to do. Don't worry about who receives credit when things go well. Don't play the blame game. In my case, the mantle of command provided me with the courage to succeed. Yeah. Extreme ownership, that's what he's talking about. Personal accountability, that's what he's talking about. Being in great physical condition, that's what he's talking about. That's discipline. I guess as we read this, and I didn't read this book until a week ago. Yeah, a week ago I read this book. So it's not like I read this book and said, hey, personal accountability is the most important thing about, being a leader. No. This guy came to the same conclusion in World War II that I came to in conclusion in my experience in the military. Now he starts talking a little bit about combat fatigue, how much combat fatigue there was. In Normandy, I witnessed lots of stress, some in Holland, much more in Bastogne due to the intense cold, lack of sleep, and inadequate clothing. In Belgium, combat fatigue reached astronomical proportions. We had spent 70 days in the front lines in Holland and didn't have time to recover before we boarded the trucks to take us to Bastogne. On reflection, I realized what happened by the time the command arrived at Bastogne. The men had been on the front line since Normandy. Men were exhausted. No hot food, little sleep, no rest, constant tension, and intense pressure from combat. They were physically exhausted. Inclement weather and constant rain and snow made matters even worse. Physical exhaustion leads to mental exhaustion, which in turn causes men to lose discipline. The loss of self-discipline produces combat fatigue. Over and over again. Over and over again we hear that. How important is discipline? It is the most important thing. And if discipline is what gets people through these situations, through combat stress, through tension, through bombs, through artillery, through freezing cold, lack of food, lack of sleep, imagine what discipline can do in like a normal person's life.
Yeah.
Back to the book. How can you possibly compare a man who's been under just one concentrated artillery bombardment for 5 minutes to a place like Bastogne, where he could be in the line for weeks or months? In one of Ambrose's books, he states that prolonged artillery bombardment will break any soldier. In civilian life, of course, we refer to combat fatigue as a mental breakdown. That is exactly the way it is in combat. It's a mental breakdown. The intensity, it becomes a problem for me to express my feelings here, but I'd like to share it with you. The intensity of a fire or a heavy concentration, to be a leader, you have to be able to concentrate on that fire and move just as soon as it stops or the last rounds hit. Move. Get up. Start circulating among your men. Is everybody okay? Let's get up. Let's move. Keep your eye open for an attack. Get their attention. Move among your men as quickly as possible. And moving among them, the fact that they see you and they're talking to you, they know that you are there and you are talking to them, and it makes all the difference in the world to know that you are not in this thing by yourself. That's what officers must do. Break the cycle of fear. If a soldier is concentrating on his own feelings and on his own fear, and he sees you moving around, he realizes that you're sharing the burden with him. That's why he can then move. So that's very important. And that's, again, that can apply to combat, that can apply to business. People are going to start panicking. What are they going to do when they start panicking? You and the leader, as the leader, need to step up, get out there, talk to people, find out what's going on, tell them that we're going to move. Show them that you're not afraid and that you are afraid, but you're still functioning. Lead by example. Plain and simple. Back to the book. Courage will be spent if you relax your standards. An undisciplined soldier feels isolated and alone. Maintain the standards. Don't compromise your integrity. Never give up. Don't ever give up. I love this right here. There is always one more thing that a leader can do to improve his situation and that of his command. I always felt that a leader's physical presence was indispensable to unit cohesion and morale. This is why Captain Sobel failed so miserably. Leadership by example always trumps leadership by fear. There's always one more thing that a leader can do to improve his situation and that of his command. There's always one more thing you can do. And an undisciplined soldier feels isolated and alone. They know they've given up that self-respect. How are you going to give it back to them? When your men are dying and you do not, you feel ashamed. I don't know any other way of saying it. Soldiers in war, certainly in World War II, and I suspect in every war, are generally young men in their prime. They meet death daily and in every form. They fully realize the hazards of their profession. They take chances because no young man expects to die before middle age. When the first soldier dies, that belief in immortality is shattered. As casualties mount and the core of the unit grows fewer, the remaining soldiers grow even stronger, often shutting off replacement soldiers. They don't want to know the replacements because they are often the first to die. When I saw one of my men wounded, I was happy that he had a ticket home. A soldier killed in battle was at peace. He had lived his life among men whom he had loved. I took a degree of consolation in knowing that my men had lived rather than regretting that they had died. A soldier's real fear is not losing his life in combat, but placing his comrades in jeopardy. That's why ordinary men will perform in extraordinary ways to ensure that their buddies survive. So this is another level of, war. When you're actually, and I never was at this point by any stretch, where you're looking at men that get wounded and saying, oh, lucky him, he's got a ticket home. Mm. We just weren't underneath that kind of casualty level at all. So when guys were getting wounded, it was, it was hard. It was, you didn't feel like, oh, that lucky him, he's got a ticket home. Because there wasn't enough guys getting wounded to make you think that way. Yeah. And not enough guys getting killed to make you think that way. Small percentage. That's reaching a whole new level. Back to the book. If you have selected the right personnel, then a leader must instill discipline. I mean perfect discipline. As Patton once said, discipline is the soul of the army. General Washington said the same thing when he described the Continental Army in 1776. Discipline is manifested in how well a soldier keeps his uniform, how frequently he cleans his weapon, and the pride he has in his unit. Joe Hogan of Easy Company speaks for all of us on the subject of pride in Company E. During an argument with a soldier from another company about whose company was better, Joe said, "My Company E will lick your company in 15 minutes. And if you wait until the guys who are AWOL come back, we'll do it in 5 minutes." And this is important. Unit pride leads to unit discipline. So again, now we're going back to the feelings that I had when I was a young kid in the SEAL teams. Total pride in my platoon. And this is funny because you're saying, like, look, the guys that are gone right now, they're AWOL, they're absent without leave. If you wait for them to come back, we'll be getting this done in 5 minutes. But, you know, I feel like this unit pride and unit discipline and how they go together, it's like a gang. I don't know why I think of it this way, and I talked about this at the muster. It's like a gang mentality when you start policing yourself up, right?
Yeah.
When I was in a SEAL platoon, it wasn't our bosses that were trying to keep us in line. We kept ourselves in line. You didn't want to get outside. You didn't want to do something wrong because you were going to get policed up by the boys. The E5 Mafia is what we were. So the E5 Mafia, that's a real thing, by the way. Sure. The E5 Mafia in a SEAL platoon, you got the senior guys. There's like the platoon chief, the leading petty officer. Those are like E6, E7, and then you got the assistant platoon commander. Those are like they call them the top four. Those are the guys that kind of run. They're the actual leadership. And then you got the nugs, and then in the middle of the pack right there, you got the E5s. They're the guys that are actually running things and making things happen. And the E5 Mafia is what we call them. And then at a SEAL team, there's an E5 Mafia that all works together to make things happen. But with the E5 Mafia, if you've got a good unit, that E5 Mafia, they're policing up everything. And you don't need to, as a leader, you just need to make sure that they don't take it too far is the only thing you need to make sure of. Yeah. But they're gonna make sure guys are doing the right thing. They're going to make sure that they're performing well. They're going to make sure that they're in good shape. They're going to make sure of all those things. And this was an interesting quote. What you tolerate, you condone. So again, Extreme Ownership, written by myself and Leif Babin. Well, Leif Babin wrote a line in there that says, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And he hadn't read this book, and here it is. What you tolerate, you condone. It's saying the exact same thing. If you let standards start to slide, that's what you're done. That's the new standard.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a little bit more to leadership than what we've talked about so far. Back to the book, Leading in Battle is the art of dealing with human nature and the human condition. I can't speak of higher command, but I know a few things about leadership at the small unit level. Leadership at all levels wins wars, but soldiers at the platoon, company, and battalion levels win battles. I think this is particularly true in the national army, where soldiers need to understand the reasons behind the officer's orders. We have to know why we're doing what we're doing. Would I have succeeded had I been promoted beyond battalion? I don't know. I do know that I felt comfortable at the small unit level. This is one reason why Easy Company holds such a tender place in my heart. I knew the strengths and weaknesses of every paratrooper. I could rapidly ascertain what I wanted to do and felt confident that I could convince the men to do it. After commanding Easy Company in Normandy and Holland, I know that the men felt comfortable entrusting their lives to my care. I'm not bragging because it's not my nature to do so. I'm stating fact. Knowing that I would never ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do myself led to Easy Company's confidence in me as a leader. They knew that I would never quit and that I would do everything within my power to bring them home after the war. I'm proud when I hear a paratrooper from Easy Company or 2nd Battalion remark about my courage under fire and my willingness to share their hardships. I told you once that wars do not make great men, but wars sometimes bring out the greatness in good men. Human nature. That's what it is. And, that's sort of how I describe this podcast now. An exploration of human nature. And if you want to see human nature reveal itself in its most clearest form, you have to go to war to look at that. Or other very strenuous situations. Harsh situations. Upon returning from the war, here's what Major Winters had to say. Back to the book. The war changed me. I returned to the States bitter. A different man than the young man who had enlisted in the Army in 1941. I was hardened when I returned. First impressions were more important than they had previously been. I looked at things differently. When you return from a wartime environment, you have to adjust to society, the life that you are going to be sharing with others just to make a living. Though I was comfortable in a combat environment, I wondered if I would feel at home among civilized people who wouldn't be able to understand how a soldier thinks and feels. I came to understand that I would have to make changes to be accepted into life at home. This takes time, and it's never easy. While on the front lines in prolonged combat, I often wondered about my friends back in the States, old friends I had grown up with, some of whom had avoided coming over, either by becoming conscientious objectors or working in war-related factories that the federal government had declared essential. I understand everyone doesn't have to share my belief that military service is the only form of service in wartime, but I took immense pride in my contribution to the war effort. We who fought the war were part of something noble. Military service is an honor, a privilege. Funny thing is that when I finally returned home, I had no desire to pick up with those friends who managed to skip the whole thing. I completely shut them out. I wouldn't come downstairs when they knocked on the door. Even today, when I look at a man or woman, I can't help but judge them. Does he have leadership capabilities? Would she be good in combat? Does he or she have what it takes? And I think, clearly, when you come home, those are things I think everybody goes through. Yeah. Of you're looking at people, you're kind of judging people. It certainly will leave a mark. I'll tell you, I don't think there's enough veterans now. You're not going to be able to just hang around with veterans. It's not going to happen. You gotta understand and accept the fact that not everyone served the way you served. That's just the way it is. And I try to make sure that I don't outwardly hold people to a higher expectation. And the other thing is, I think you have to walk a fine line, and you got to make sure you're not looking down on people because they didn't choose the path that you chose. Now, World War II was different or at least appears to be different, because it was so easy. So many people went on the path of, okay, December 7th happened. I'm going to sign up tomorrow, today, whatever. And I think that the way these wars that we've been fighting have gone down, it hasn't been the same. It's been different. And I think we veterans right now have to use some caution before just shutting out everyone else that didn't serve the way we did. We'd be shutting out, basically, you'd probably be shutting out most of the people in your lives. Most of my friends outside the SEAL teams, they're, jiu-jitsu. Got a bunch of friends from jiu-jitsu. None of them served. I can't just shut them all out. So I think we have to be careful about that as veterans, to make sure you're going to have those feelings, understood. Understand that there's more than that, and you got to accept other things going on in the world besides what we did. Another letter that Dick Winters wrote to Dieta Allman, going back to the book: when you're an officer, you are responsible for the lives of soldiers in your command. You think about kids like this one paratrooper I knew well, and you soon become old beyond your years. In the 3 years since I had entered the Army, I'd aged a great deal. It seems as if college days and days of civilian life when I did as I pleased are long past. It must have been a dream, a small and short but beautiful part of my life. Now all I do is work. Work to improve myself as an officer, work to improve them as fighters, as men, make them work to improve themselves. The The result is I am old before my time. Not physically old, but hardened to the point where I can make the rest of them look like undeveloped high school boys. Old to the extent where I can keep going after my men fall over and sleep from exhaustion. I can keep going as a mother who works after her sick child and exhausted child has fallen asleep. Old to the extent where if it's a decision or advice needed, my decisions are taken as if the wisdom behind them was infallible. Yes, I feel old and tired from training these men to the point where they are efficient fighters. I hope it means that some will return to those girls back home. And again, the reason I put that in there is because that's pressure. Right? That's the certain amount of pressure that a person that's been in the military has felt. And it's real, that pressure. And his wife said, Dick fights the Battle of the Bulge virtually every night. He had recurring nightmares. So even Dick Winters, a very thoughtful and squared away guy, was still living those nightmares virtually every night, his wife said. Dick also said, back to the book, I know I did everything within my power to ensure as many soldiers made it home from the war as possible. But when you survive and your soldiers don't, you feel guilty. It haunts me to this day that I lived and so many of my paratroopers died. As the veterans of Easy Company pass on, I am reminded of those who never returned from the war. I see their faces. I can almost hear them calling me. And again, I think that everybody that served and survived when your friends and your brothers didn't, you're always going to have that. And it's not going to go away. And Dick Winters, Major Dick Winters, died January 2nd, 2011. Obviously, they had a memorial service, a big memorial service for him. Back to the book. Those who remained alive voiced their sympathy. Said former platoon sergeant William Grenier, who had lost a leg outside Bastogne. Dick always said, hang tough and follow me. When he said, let's go, he was right in the front. He was never in the back, a leader personified. He was the best commander we ever had. We'd have followed him anywhere. Edward Babe Heffron, who served alongside Winters at Bastogne and who helped liberate Hitler's Eagle's Nest, added, he was one hell of a guy, one of the greatest soldiers I ever was under. He was a wonderful officer, a wonderful leader. He had what you needed, guts and brains. He took care of his men. That's very important. Popeye Wynn added, it seemed as if he always made the right decision. He was a real soldier. He was one of the best. It started with him doing the right thing. I don't know how he survived the war, but he did. Another Easy Company veteran concurred, noting every one of us, we'd follow him to hell. That's the type of guy he was. And Also speaking at that ceremony was a guy by the name of Eric Gendrinson, who was the screenwriter, or one of the screenwriters for Band of Brothers. And he was trying to get the screenplay and the series to be as accurate as possible, and so he spent a lot of time with Dick Winters, and he got to know him very well. And I found what he said about Dick Winters to be very important. Here we go, back to the book. Dick Winters made it his personal quest to excel. Whether it was executing the perfect push-up or training himself to run 3 miles up and down Currahee Mountain, this pursuit was his private tool, his solution. And it was that solo effort, that obsessive clarity and pure, determined, self-contained purpose that his men observed, and that caused them to follow when he said simply, "Follow me." Not just through that hedgerow in Normandy and across that field in Holland under enemy fire, but follow my example, follow my commitment, and we'll get through this, and we will succeed. And Dick Winters was laid to rest in his family plot in the Evangelical Lutheran Cemetery in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, the Saturday following his death. And his gravestone reads simply, Richard D. Winters, World War II, 101st Airborne, 1918 to 2011. And Dick Winters, before he died, said, "I am the man I am today because of Easy Company. Easy Company made me. As I reflect upon my life since the war, I can honestly say that it has been a lifetime search for men like those I knew in Easy Company. I haven't found too many. I don't think I know braver soldiers than Joe Toy, Bill Guarnier, or Floyd Talbert. I live with these guys every day. I mourn when they pass." Carwood Lipton died in December 2001. His death struck me particularly hard. So did Bull Randleman's. Lipton didn't live to see the acclaim Easy Company received when the miniseries was released. I try not to think of the bad times anymore. I think mostly of the good times. The emotion will always be there. And, you know, Dick Winters said that war brings out greatness in men. And he also realized that war makes you appreciate your country. And Major Winters, before he died, said, "Well, it probably sounds strange to you, but when I brought Easy Company to Utah Beach so we could board the LST to return to England on July 11th, 1944, I saw that beach for the first time with that vast armada of ships as far as the eye could see in every direction. Seeing the American flag fluttering over that beach, I felt weak in the knees and tears filled my eyes. Suddenly, that flag meant something different than it ever had before. I have never looked at our flag since without that memory in mind." Now I am an old man, but that feeling has never left me. And finally, and I always say that war is awful. And war is a nightmare. But war does certainly make you appreciate life. And Dick Winters certainly appreciated the rest of his life. And he said this: I sit here in this house and I gaze out the window. I see flowers and the birds. I behold the wonder of nature. Everything seems so beautiful. And that wraps up that book. Everything seems so beautiful. And, you know, over the past couple of weeks, I've been traveling a bunch and meeting a lot of different people, business people, workers, police and firefighters and active duty military and veterans, just people. And we people, we get caught up in all kinds of chaos and mayhem. Mayhem from the past. We get caught up in that about what we should have done. Or what we should have left undone. And we feel this pressure about the future, about what we should do or what we shouldn't do or where we're going and how we should get there. And I get that. I get that. I understand it. I feel it too. Life is hard. Life is hard. And if you aren't careful, it will grind you down. And you know, I talk about detachment a lot from a leadership perspective, and we talked about it today, and it's certainly important. But it's also a tool for your mind and for your sanity. Step back. Step back and look around. Not just to see what your next move is and where to head next and what to focus on, but step back to look around and see life. This life, your life, not surrounded by the pressure and the war and the failures and the violence and the nightmares and the mistakes and the grind. Not that life. But life as it is without our intervention. A blessing. A journey. A short little bit of time on an incredibly fast-moving sphere of amazement. Where if you can detach and step back and look for a moment, you'll see. that, like Dick Winters said, everything seems so beautiful. And I think that's all I've got for tonight. So, Echo Charles.
Yeah.
Some lessons learned.
Yeah.
Very impactful for me, and a big reminder for me. We worked heavily with the first of the 506 band of brothers in the Battle of Ramadi. We had the Delta platoon commander and a group of his guys spent the whole time over there, and what an incredible bunch of soldiers they were. Just incredible. The impact that they had on the battlefield, the leadership I saw at every level. And whenever I think of the Band of Brothers, my first thoughts when I think of the Band of Brothers isn't about Dick Winters. It isn't about the series. It isn't about the books. My first thought of the Band of Brothers is the 1st of 506 Battalion that we were honored to work with in the Battle of Ramadi, and one of my platoons worked intently with the entire time. And so for their service and sacrifice, I am eternally thankful for what they did and what they taught us, and for us being alongside them was real humbling.
Yeah. You mentioned how like in all these books and all these lessons that discipline is like so important. And there was a time you mentioned like imagine how important it is, or how beneficial, whatever it could be, just in everyday life. Remember that?
Yes.
So that's crazy. And the more books like this that we go over, whatever, that message like becomes more and more clear. Because you know how like you get like creative guys, you know, but they don't have discipline, kind of thing, or you get super disciplined guys, but they don't have creativity, or kind of. But every once in a while, you'll find a person, or you'll notice a person who does bring them together, and you see the results. Like you see what kind of productivity, or you just see the results in one way or another, like these get like fighters, or I don't know, author, like anyone.
Absolutely.
So man, it's crazy how. Because, if you're like naturally gifted or whatever at something, you, in a way.
Not
like,
really. Cool. I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, but I mean, let's say you notice someone and you see it in all these different fields as well, where
someone that's got a lot of natural talent.
Yeah.
But they don't
have because essentially through upbringing or whatever, just their environment, they don't need it really. They don't need it. Like
just get away with it because it's just on their talent.
They get away with it. Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hear that a lot. This idea that talent, it doesn't mean anything if you don't have the discipline to make things happen. And a person that's highly disciplined will outperform someone that might be more talented.
Yeah,
all day
eventually.
long.
Yeah.
All day long.
Yeah,
It was all day long too strong. Because in the beginning.
In the beginning, I think,
sure.
exactly. I feel like eventually, the discipline is the thing that's just going to carry you through. So, and I just thought that was super important, where you were like, imagine if you apply this to everyday life, because everyday life, essentially for us anyway, it's like a straight up luxury.
Yeah, it is. And here's what's important about what you're saying is this fact that the reason that these guys had to have discipline was because if they didn't have discipline, they would die.
Yeah.
If they didn't have discipline, they would be overrun. If they didn't have discipline, they would starve. They would just die. They would die. Yeah. So they have to have discipline. Yeah. And your point is, in this world, in this life, in 2017, living in the first world, you don't have to have discipline at all.
Yeah.
And you'll still survive.
Yeah.
And you might even do okay.
Yeah, sure.
But just imagine.
Yeah.
Just imagine if you apply the discipline to your life, where you'll end up.
Yeah.
And how much better off you'll be. Yeah. And how much more you can do with your life. The one life you have, by the way.
Yeah,
how much more you can do with that life if you just have the discipline and work hard and get after it.
Yeah. And you see it in little pockets too. Like, remember when you're a kid and you're like, I'm going to save my money for this, I don't know, comic book. I don't know. I'm going to save my money. You don't even have an income, by the way, but somehow you save all your money, like that little quarter that you find. That's like, I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that because you have this kind of, and in a way, like the discipline kind of forms itself around that goal. So you know what it is. Like, you know what that means, So it's real. Like, that's a real thing. You shouldn't regard it as some ambiguous thing that other people
it's not,
do. Like,
it's not,
we all
it's not
can
some
do it in
fancy,
one way.
crazy thing at all.
Yeah.
It's real straightforward.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the first podcasts we did where I said something along the lines of like, you know what you need to do.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, we all
Just
know
gotta
what
do
we
it.
should be doing.
I think that was the first.
There's not too many people that are lost that are going, I'm just not sure how to do this. No, they know exactly what to do. We know exactly what to do. I know exactly what I should be doing.
I'll tell you what it is. It's distractions. There's too many distractions. And distractions are literally everything. There's industries of just distractions. That's the whole industry. Like
TV. It's a big industry of distraction.
Huge. And in the defense of TV, TV can be
Can't
an
defend TV with
yeah,
me,
you can. Because there's educational stuff on TV.
Defended.
But I'm just saying,
I
like,
concede your point.
the entertainment industry, and I'm not saying these industries of distractions are bad things. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying distractions are what get in the way of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like your goal.
Yeah, and well, we're talking about the very fact of some of your discipline can be used to create things that are actually distracting. I mean, if your goal is to create some artistic piece, whether it's a movie, whether it's music, whether it's whatever, that's a distracting thing. But that doesn't mean that it's negative that you want to make that happen. Because there's people that'll find something. I mean, the reason you want to create something is, I guess you create it for yourself, but then the reward is when other people say, yes, I get something out of that too.
Yeah. Recognition from your peers.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and when I say distractions, in regards to goal, it's a relative thing, meaning like you're distracted from your path of the goal.
I agree with you, yeah, but there's also just mentally, just weakness. Just the easy path, I should say.
Right.
The discipline path is hard. The easy path that anyone wants to jump on when your alarm clock goes off, blah, 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 right? I've talked about these things a million times. That's what the problem is. The problem isn't even a distraction. The problem is just the lack of will to do what you need to do.
Right.
Distraction can add to that. That's a part of it. What we do is we take our the path of least resistance, and then we throw distraction on top of that. For instance, when you open up your computer because you got to write a book, and instead of opening the word processor, you go, I'm just going to check the interwebs real quick.
Distracted.
Yeah, you're distracted. There goes 45 minutes. You ever notice? Seriously, the internet is a time warp.
Oh, yeah.
Your time just disappears in the internet.
There's a lot of distractions on there.
Yeah,
for sure. And really, what I mean by distraction is you have this long-term goal, right? Your goal is your payoff, your long-term payoff. So the distractions really are these little short-term payoffs that drag you, that distract you. So that's what the distraction is.
I like how you broke that out for me.
Right.
Distract.
Right.
Get
Exactly.
you off the track.
Exactly right. So the weakness will let those distractions kind of take hold for sure. But so they work hand in hand for sure. So if you can, because again, that saving money for comic books thing, so consider that as the goal. So the distractions are going to be the candy that you want to buy, or I don't know, you play dice with your friend. I don't know, whatever the distractions is in regards to that specific path.
I like Echo's world right now. Like playing dice with your friends, saving for comic books. It's like 1956. I like it.
But either way, like the distractions, they're irrelevant. So when I say, okay, the distractions are there. When I say there's industries of distractions, again, I'm not saying those are bad things. They are bad things if they're distracting you from your goal. So you can have all kinds of goals.
Because if you think about it, sometimes you just need to let your mind take a rest.
Yeah,
And
fully.
you need one of those. I got something to say.
Catch a football game. Yeah.
I just flew home from, like, I've been on the road all over the world. Did the muster, did a bunch of speeches, did some consulting, was all over the place, on the plane the whole time. And I flew home from the East Coast. When was that? A couple days ago. And when I flew, I haven't done this in forever. I flew home. I watched a movie.
Oh, yeah.
I just did a total distraction because I said, you know what? I can't. I'm not in the game right now. Like, I need, my brain just needs to shut off and do something, which I don't like to do, which is you can either do two things. I look at it, you can either consume or you can produce, right? Yeah. I want to be producing. I want to be putting together. I want to be writing. I want to be thinking. I want to be reading for the podcast, prepping. That's what I want to be doing. I want to be producing something. Consuming is I'm just absorbing what someone else made.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just going to absorb this. A lot of times it is garbage. So, but I flew home, had a long flight, and I was like, you know what? I need to check out. Right. I need to check out right now and just do nothing. Yeah. So I watched 2 movies.
Dig it.
Two movies.
What'd you watch?
We got to know what you're going to ask. The 2 movies I watched. The first one was not Heartbreak Ridge. It's the new movie that just came out.
With who?
About DOS that Mel Gibson directed. What's it called?
I don't know.
This is a big, successful movie. Conscientious objector, World War II. He wins the Medal of Honor. Or he's awarded the Medal of Honor. So that was a good movie. You know, it's a World War II movie. I liked it. It's not, in my opinion, 5-star, but it was good. It was entertaining.
Sure.
It told the story. And then after that, I watched Zoolander. That was when I was going into full decompression mode.
Good on you, bro.
I watched Zoolander.
Yeah.
Because it's a hilarious movie. I have a buddy in the teams that we nicknamed Mugatu.
Sure.
Yeah, because, you know, he would go crazy. So we had to call him Mugatu.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was just a funny movie. I just decompressed. Yeah, and man. I don't do that very often.
Hey,
you know,
dig it.
The grind is always happening. But I just had to take a little detachment. What was the name of that movie? There's not famous actors. I guess there's one. Who's the really funny guy? Anyways, it was a good movie.
Yeah. So so the question is that really a distraction? So, you know, like a football game or a movie or something that you're not doing to put you, you know, more forward on your path or whatever. But if you're taking a break, is that a distraction? Like if I'm lifting, I do a workout and then I go recover from that workout by resting, is that a distraction?
No, it wasn't a distraction.
Right.
I should have grinded though.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I was done. In your mind.
I was done. So I tapped out.
So a distraction is more of an idea, more the concept, you know? So
no, there's definitely things that are distracting.
Just like how you said when you open your computer and the whole internet is there to distract you in one way or another.
Yeah.
That's a distraction, you know, where you can, like, even if I have a book, if my goal is to finish some video, but meanwhile I have this book that's real informative and, you know, something, and I'm like, you know, oh, that book seems real, I'm real in the mood to read that book. That's a distraction, even though it's a good thing, you know. So the distraction is like the idea. So, you know, what are the common goals? I want to get in shape. I want to, you know, be a better husband or wife, or I want to do better at work. I want to learn more. I want to read all this stuff.
Get better at jiu-jitsu.
All this stuff. You can get distracted by these other things, you know. Before I don't know, read, I'm gonna surf Instagram or something like that. That's a distraction, you know. And now, which was my original point, is the reason, or one of the reasons, that we don't apply this extreme discipline as it's outlined in these books here is one of the reasons is because we have literally infinite amount of distractions right now.
Well, there's also no consequence. Or I shouldn't say that. The consequence isn't visible.
Yeah.
The consequence, you don't say, hey, if I would have had discipline, I would reach this ultimate potential. You just okay with not reaching that ultimate potential, and you're okay with just like putting microwavable popcorn in and watching a movie.
You've been doing it the whole time.
Yeah,
I'm still here.
Hey, I'm still here. I'm good. And you know what? That was a good movie, and the popcorn tasted good. You know what I mean? That's the wrong answer.
Yeah.
You don't recognize what your potential is, and so you're just okay with this kind of half potential. You don't reach your potential, and since you don't know it. And the other thing, it's hard to see how that long term affects you.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh, it's just one bag of popcorn and it's just one movie.
Yeah.
But you did that 3 times this week.
Yeah.
You know, that's not getting you
30 times, you know, in the past 10 weeks.
Yeah, you could write 30,000 words. No, more than that.
Yeah.
You're going to write about 1,000 words an hour.
Bro, a good way to look at it, and I think I might have said this before, where it's not like a moment to moment looking to the future kind of thing. You should look at it but in the sense of looking at it in the past. So let's say you consider the last 1 year or 2 years, right? And let's say I wanted to play better guitar or something.
Good goal.
Yeah.
I have that goal. I always fail at it.
There you go. So you look at it in this way, where you don't say, okay, if I spend an hour a day, you know, practicing guitar in a year, I'll be better. You don't necessarily look like that. You can, but a good way to look at it, or a helpful way, is if you look at it last year, where, dang, if I would have played an hour a day right now, as I'm sitting here with you right now, that'd be dope at guitar, you know, kind of like that. So you kind of get in my experience, I've kind of got this feeling of like wasted time, you know, that feeling where it's like, dang, I gotta play catch up now. That's a little bit more compelling. I think sometimes it can be.
Yeah.
So if you think about it that way too, I think that helps. I don't know. Maybe not.
Speaking of
help and potential.
Oh,
both.
Nicely done.
Double gravitational. You need help by way of supplementation if you're working out. So, man, how you said you can't not work out, I think. Especially nowadays. Like you could, because your life probability wise is cruising. You're cruising physically. Where, you know, you go to the office. Because really, that's
life is physically easy right now for most people.
And gets easier and easier. Even if it's not easy right now, next year, generally speaking, it's going to be easier. You know, like so I'm brushing my teeth like I do every week or whatever. And
once a week, whether you need it or not.
Yeah. And so I have the regular toothbrush, you know. I'm sure there's all kinds of little micro technologies in the toothbrush. But I started to think, man, this is an old school thing. There's automatic toothbrushes. Actually, my brother told me about this toothbrush, this automatic, you know, electric toothbrush that was like super dope and highly recommended it. It was like $89, all this stuff. And I'm thinking, dang, something as basic as brushing your teeth is way easier now. Way easier. You got a machine to do it. That's really the whole narrative with everything. Point being, physically,
you got to push yourself because you're not going to have to push it.
You got to recreate it.
No one's going to push you.
Yeah. Your environment is starting to work more and more against you in regards to physical activity. So, my point being, you got to work out.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a real straightforward thing. Work out.
Yeah, but I feel like it's easy for you, you know, to be like, yeah, it seems obvious, you know. They call that the curse of knowledge. You know how when you're like so advanced in this one thing that you forget how it is to not be advanced?
Yeah, that's true. I have forgotten what it's like to not be advanced in terms of trying to explain to people why they would. I think it's pretty self-evident to anybody why you'd work out.
No, you're wrong.
Yeah, okay.
Think about this. And I thought about this one. Like, okay, you know when you go into a jiu-jitsu gym? Okay, you're different, so you could very well not even understand this. This might not compute with you, but if you walk into a jiu-jitsu gym, and this applies to even a regular 24-hour fitness gym, if you've never been in there before, if you've never worked out, that's a really intimidating thing. You come in, everyone's looking at me. I don't know how to use the machines. I don't know how to work out. Like, everyone's looking at me, judging me. I'm dumb. It is not my element, all this stuff. It's intimidating, you know?
Okay.
But it's real. It's what I'm saying. You know how you say, like, you probably don't know about that because you have the curse of knowledge in regards to like physical activity, working out, you know, all that stuff. And then the pain that comes with it, I dig it. I understand. But that's even more of a reason to work out. Physical condition. Anyway, you'd be glad you did. If you don't work out, just jump in there. Jump in.
Go to the gym.
Last year, if you would have started working out, you know how dope you'd be right now? Way doper than you are if in the event you didn't start last year. See what I'm saying? Anyway, while you work out, your joints might be kind of sore. I know this from experience. Take krill oil. My father-in-law turned me on to it. Actually, technically didn't successfully turn me on to it, but he tried. He tried. And, you know, I didn't see the light until Jocko turned me onto it. So now I'm turning everyone else onto it, hopefully successfully. Krill oil is, I'm not going to go into a whole deep thing here, but it's for your joint. So if you get joint pain, just with degeneration over time, you get older, you dig it, krill oil will bring you back. They'll function. It's kind of like your joints are like always warm now. Not like to the touch warm, but like warm, like ready for action. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, krill oil. I didn't even say by who, huh?
Yeah.
If you don't know, Onnit. That's the whole company, and they don't have just krill oil. They have other stuff too.
They also have Shroom Tech.
Yeah, performance stuff.
Which I recommend. I recommend Shroom Tech, by the way.
Big time, especially if you're going for performance.
Yeah, if you're gonna go train jiu-jitsu with Andy, Taylor, Dean, Craig Baker, Greg Train, Echo Charles, just take
the Shroom Tech, you know what? Sport.
Yeah, Shroom Tech Sport. Take 3 of them.
Oh, is that the formula?
No, that's the recommended. I didn't know that. And then I read it.
Yeah.
Like one day I just read the instructions for no reason. I was like, I wonder if I take 12 of these things, if I'll be even more tech.
Yeah, I wonder.
But I did say 3 because I had been taking 2.
Oh, for real?
So I took 3. But it felt a little bit more
legit. Yeah, I always take
shroom-teched.
3 and never let down. And again, that's for the performance. So if I'm just cruising, if I'm just taking a walk around the block or 2, I take the Shroom Tech. I'm not going to feel it as much as if I jump in jiu-jitsu rounds, you know?
Yeah, no,
So
you
I'm saying
need to, I take it when I have to perform a situation.
Yeah, big time. Me too. You take Shroom Tech Immune, not to be confused with.
And I've taken Shroom Tech Immune when I go massive travel. 'Cause you're getting all these planes with all these people, everyone's sick, coughing, sneezing.
Yeah.
It's all nasty. And you know what I do? Just go ahead and take some Shroom Tech Immune.
And just relax.
It's something different because it's yellowish.
the label's green too, so.
The whatever you're eating is more yellow.
Yeah, I think the ingredients. We'll just say the ingredients are yellow.
I take vitamin C,
Obvious.
actually, when I'm on a big travel. Vitamin C, Shroom Tech Immune.
I hear zinc is a good one too. That's what I hear.
I've taken zinc before to try and overcome a cold, but I wasn't very, convinced.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will power some vitamin C, though, if I feel like some kind of a disease coming on.
Yeah.
Just power the vitamin C.
See, and that's kind of the good thing where you take this Shroom Tech Immune.
Yeah.
You know that they were like, okay, does vitamin C help? Okay, check. It does zinc, and I don't know. I didn't read the ingredients
Me
you
neither.
did and thought were about to or whatever, but
I read the effects.
yeah, okay, got you.
Raise my immune system. Gonna need that plane. Bunch of dirty people. Not all of you, but many of you.
Many.
Sneezing.
Sure.
Sneezing on everyone. Coughing on everyone.
Yeah.
And by the way, because I'm gonna go talk to people, I can't be going,
No,
how you doing? I'm Jocko. Or, I can't do that. I have to actually be able to talk.
Yeah, coughing, saying
Yeah,
excuse
coughing.
me the whole time.
Yeah, I can't be. It's
good.
awful if you sneeze or cough when you're on a mic in front of a big group of people.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Or if you keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Shroom
it's no
Tech
good.
Immune.
Shroom Tech,
Onnit.com.
You know the good stuff's in there. Okay, yes, Onnit.com. You want 10% off all this stuff. Onnit.com/Jocko. And here's the thing. We just talked about, right now, we talked about krill oil, Shroom Tech Sport, Shroom Tech Immune.
Alpha Brain.
Oh, okay, yeah. Alpha Brain. Bro, we could go all night with this. Because of all the good stuff
Did you
is
take
what I'm
Alpha Brain
saying.
today?
I did. You watched me actually while you were
Yeah, I
reading. and
did.
took
I had
some.
Alpha Brain today, and I was thinking you took it, but then when you wanted that long story about something, and I was sort of wondering maybe he didn't take his Alpha Brain today.
No. Then when I wrapped it up, you were like, dang, he was on that Alpha Brain the whole time.
Oh, he was on that Alpha Brain. I didn't see it.
Alpha Brain.
That statement made me think you were on Alpha Brain today. Just because you were
There you
able
go.
to complete your whole deal right there, I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah,
Alpha
brought
Brain.
it back.
Listen
Yeah.
to Echo's story, and then when it comes to the
Yeah.
closure, you go, dang, I'm going to get some of that.
Exactly right. See, hey, take my lead example. You understand what I'm saying? So Alpha Brain, if you don't know, because we haven't talked about it as much as
Yeah.
I feel like as far as its role in our lives, my life, anyway, I'm speaking for myself, where you take it's called nootropic. It's basically brain food, brain
Food.
supplements, like to make your brain
You know what I'm
function
gonna
better.
get too, because I've been taking mostly mostly Alpha Brain in the powder because
Yeah.
it tastes good.
Yeah.
The peach and the spice.
Spice.
I've been taking it in that more than I'm gonna get, and I actually ran out of the pills.
Yeah.
The capsules.
Wait, so you'd prefer the capsules? You're saying?
Well, sometimes capsules a little bit more convenient, right?
Yeah. But I
like
it like the
if I'm doing an
experience.
event or I'm gonna go on a podcast,
Yeah.
and I want to just be able to bam
Makes
get
sense,
some
yeah.
Alpha Brainy in the brainy.
See, bro, you're always in a hurry doing a bunch of stuff, bro. Mix it up, a little ritual. Like when you brew tea, it's like, I don't know, it's a whole experience. Anyway, either way, they're both the same deal, and they're called nootropics. Proven, by the way. I'm not just saying, it feels good for me, so you should take it. I'm not just saying that.
Now, when you say that,
Yeah.
but to me, that means more to me than, I don't know why, but like when you say, it's been double, triple blind, placebo, blah, 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 controlled.
Yeah.
I would rather have like someone that I know say, bro, I'm telling you, take this stuff. Like
Yeah.
I did with krill oil to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was more important than reading a bunch of facts about it.
Yeah. And
If you
that's,
take someone that you know and they're saying, look, man, give it a little crack.
yeah. And
Trust me on this one.
And I think most people have that in one way or another, not with everything, but yeah, like if you recommend a movie or something like that, and then meanwhile look at the reviews are like super good, but then you're like, it was junk because of this, because of that. It's like it's an
I haven't
authentic
watched a movie
thing.
in so long. And I went right to the classic 90s. It said 90s comedy. What kind of mood is Jocko in when I go to 90s comedy?
Oh, with Zoolander? Yeah, man.
That's just ridiculous.
Not mad
That's just ridiculous. But I like Owen. Is it Owen Wilson in that movie?
No, the other one. Oh, wait, yeah, sorry. I'm thinking Ben Stiller.
I like that guy, Owen Wilson. He's funny. I like him because he comes across as very truthful in the way he says things.
Like almost naive, too.
Yeah.
You know?
He's just like, seems like a good dude to hang out with. Seems like he'd be fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
But he's kind of got this air about him that's
kind of airheady.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nonetheless, back to the alpha brain. I think that when they prove it, I think certain people, certain types of like mindsets or whatever kind of more gravitate towards that. Like they're like, okay, that's cool that it worked for you, but that could have been placebo. That could have been this. That could have been your mood that day or whatever. If I'm going to commit to this, I want some hard facts. Some people, that's how. So boom, you got the hard facts as well as a legitimate recommendation. Because I was taking this even before, the podcast and stuff. So I was into it. Nonetheless, Alpha Brain, that's a good one. A bunch of other cool stuff. If you're into protein powder, good, clean protein powder on there. All workout stuff, too, by the way. I got a bunch of kettlebells. They're Primal Bells, Legend Bell, the artistic one. They're dope. Look at my Instagram. There's some on there. Anyway, that is a good way to support yourself, help yourself, maintain the workouts, physical activity, all that stuff. So you can be successful in that way. I don't think there's any excuse anymore. I for real don't. Also, good way to support. Really good way to support Amazon click-through. When you go and get the book, Conversations with Major Dick Winters, go to the website. It's listed there with and click through there. Boom. So basically, it's an Amazon click-through. You buy it through Amazon. Amazon click-through. You before you do your shopping, click through the website. Amazon. Boom. Supports the podcast. Small action, big reaction. Because the click-through only takes what?
3 seconds, I think we've determined.
Maximum, really. So, give them some leeway. So we'll say 3 seconds. And then the reaction is massive support for this podcast. That's a good way. Amazon click-through the website, JockoPodcast.com, or I think it's on JockoStore.com as well. But just go to JockoPodcast.com. Click through before you do your Amazon shopping. Also, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes if you haven't already. Stitcher, Google Play, all these other podcasting providing platforms. Also on YouTube. If you don't mind the video version of this podcast, go to YouTube, watch it there. It's cool. It adds that other layer of experience.
Yeah, everyone seems to do that when there's a guest.
Yeah.
Because they don't know who that person is. They know what you look like. They know what I look like.
Most people.
Well, if they're listening to the podcast, eventually they know what you look like. They know what I look like.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason sometimes. Although sometimes you can see, like when certain subjects come up and there's maybe some intensity in the podcast, more people watch it.
I've noticed
but if it's a pretty mellow podcast and we're just talking about whatever we're talking about, maybe not everyone feels the need to go to the YouTube. But when the guest comes on, people want to see what that person looks like. And there's usually some more animated interactions.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, big time. Yeah, man. So if you're into that.
You know what? It'd be cool if you made a little clip of when Tim Kennedy was on. And I read a question from the audience, was something along the lines of, I said, hey, they took away bayonet training from boot camp, and Tim Kennedy just goes, God damn it. That's one of my favorite parts of any podcast ever. I would really appreciate it if you'd make that clip, even if it was like 12 seconds long.
Just that part.
Yeah, just 12 seconds long. It would be worth having on there because everyone should know that that's a travesty that they stopped doing bayonet courses in Army boot camp.
All right, you got it. Some people, if they don't hear this exact part, they can be kind of confused, but hey, I think they'll appreciate it. Yeah. I think so.
Oh, they'll hear it.
Yeah, they'll dig it fully.
But there's good animation.
Yeah.
He's getting crazy.
Yeah, man.
Which is fun.
And really, in general, just to YouTube, that's an added, like I said, in that added visual layer. If you're down for it. Sometimes people, you put it on your TV, let's say in your garage, you're working out, or it's on the TV. It's kind of like you're in the conversation a little bit more. It feels like it.
And also, if people subscribe to the YouTube channel, then when they can sign up where if you make an excerpt,
right,
then they can get that, because that's cool. I think that's a good thing is it's much easier to share an excerpt from the podcast than it is to share an audio. I don't even know how to share an audio piece of a podcast. I don't even know how to do that. It probably can't be done.
Probably. That's why we have the YouTube.
Yeah.
So go ahead, subscribe to that one. And speaking of, you mentioned the excerpts. Yeah, I put some excerpts. You can't, if you don't want to share, or you anticipate that this person's not going to listen to 2.5 hours of a podcast when you share it, you just get the little lesson, that you want to share. Be like, hey, how to, approach college,
or
whatever.
One.
Yeah, that's a popular one.
Because everybody that went to college already wishes they had that when they went to college.
Yeah, so when they encounter someone who's going to, go to college, their kids or nephew, neighbor, whatever, boom, they have some advice directly from Jocko. Anyway, so you share that. Subscribe to the YouTube. That's the point there. Subscribe to the YouTube if you want, and if you want to support, and if you want, you can sign up for a little alert when I upload something on there.
I get those alerts.
You can get after
I'm usually
it.
pretty stoked when I see something coming through.
It's like a little present. Anyway, so YouTube, good one. Also, Jocko has a store. It's called JockoStore. JockoStore.com. If you want t-shirts and whatnot, discipline equals freedom. The one that simply says "get after it" on the front, that seemed to have gone over pretty well, I'd say.
Well, and also it seems worth noting that we now offer the Victory MMA shirt.
The Jocko uniform.
That I wear all the time.
Yep.
I wear it when I record the podcast. I wear it all the time. We, obviously, because we have our gym.
Yeah.
We have a lot of t-shirts that say our gym's name on it. And so I wear that t-shirt a lot.
Yeah.
And I always have.
Yeah.
And then I didn't intentionally do it on the podcast in the beginning. I just happened to be wearing it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And then someone said, "Is that the only shirt Jocko wears?"
Yeah.
And at that point I said, "Why, yes, it is."
No, bruh. You're like the guy on The Fly. Remember the movie The Fly?
Yeah.
And the lady's like, what was her? I forget her name. She's like, "Hey, is that your only set of clothes or something like that?" And she sees in his closet that they're all the same.
Oh, yeah. That is me. That is me.
Yeah.
I like to have the things that are the same. But people would come and ask me, "Hey, where can I get the t-shirt? Where can I get the t-shirt?" So now we put it on the Jocko store.
Strangely, they didn't even have them at Victory, because people would come in and be
this
like, "Hey, we want
school.
to."
This is the thing. This is
original.
old school. This is an original. This is the original Victory MMA t-shirt, and we had to reproduce it.
Yeah.
So it's a reissue.
Yeah, and all.
Which is dope in its own respect, right?
Yeah, it is. So I'm trying to think. Like, is that inauthentic? It's not, because it's the exact same design.
Yeah,
it's the exact design. It's literally the exact same design.
The same file, right?
Yeah. Boom.
So you can get that one if you want it.
Yeah.
You can represent
big time. It's good. It's interesting because yours are like old school, so they kind of have like a fade to them.
Yeah.
The
new ones.
So you get the new one, they're like, ooh,
yeah,
gleaming,
they look sharp,
beaming.
I'm
gleaming.
gonna grab a couple of those too, by the way.
All right. Well, just
because I was running low, and I would hate to have other things in my.
Yeah.
What's that called when you have clothes? My wardrobe. Yeah.
Yes. See, man. Good thinking, Jocko. Anyway, JockoStore.com. Check those out. Some other new things, items on there. Let me talk about this mug. I'm not gonna take too much time because we've been going at it. So this travel mug right here. So you know how at home, you have your cup. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm talking about.
Actually,
the one that
I do.
you use.
And you know what? I have actually, my wife, once she searched forever to get me a cup that I like.
Yeah.
And she found it.
Yeah.
And then she went to Target and bought, a dozen of them. They're big, giant, plastic, but feel like glass, whatever that is, acrylic or something.
Yeah.
Can't break, but you can, but they feel good in your hand. So I have a bunch of those, but apparently it's getting replaced.
Yes. So strangely, I had the same thing. Well, I was on the same search. So I had this one. What I arrived at, my favorite cup was pink because they didn't have any other colors. It was pink, but it was big. It was like maybe like 24 ounce, like big cup. That's what I used for everything. It was pink, whatever. That meant nothing to me compared to
with your manhood.
Yeah, man. Compared to the functionality, the pink was nothing. But here's the thing: it could barely fit in my cup holder. The kind like you put it in, but it was like kind of stuck. You'd have to, fine. But that was the cup. That was the best one. You use any other cup, you just, I don't know.
How you doing now?
I'm gonna get to that. So, but you know what I mean, though. So you know exactly what I mean. Where you have your cup.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Where's my? It could be dirty. There could be cups everywhere, all available. You're like, no, I'm gonna go ahead and wash this, and I'm gonna use my cup. That's it. This one, okay. We'll talk about this mug. It's technically a travel tumbler, right?
Been heard it.
Whatever, comes with the top, all that stuff. But you take off the top, boom, that's a cup too. Ergonomically conducive to just using it as a cup. You know how if you have like threads in there to screw on a top,
threads.
There's
but
no
it somehow
threads.
stays.
It's like, it's like a thing. Anyway. And that's not to mention the look, black on black. What do they call that? Murdered out. You ever heard that expression, murdered out?
No.
Try Google, if you have time, Google murdered out Cadillac
Just
or car.
tell me what it is.
It's a flat matte painting with black wheels. So it's like basically all black, tinted windows, all black. So this thing is murdered out technically. Flat, black, matte with like the logo, the 434, and the discipline equals room is like shiny black.
Black on black.
Very nice. Ooh, very nice. So, and that's just the design. So function wise, perfect. 30 ounces, not 24, 30 straight up. And what is it? BPA free, all this. So you don't get poisoned over time. Come on, bro. That's a big thing. And also, okay. And here's the impressive part when I ultimately was like, dang, like impressed. I guess this is like a technology that's kind of been around, but I didn't know because I had that plastic cup, whatever. This, it'll separate the temperatures from inside and outside. So the inside temperature won't leak to the outside, meaning it keeps, like, if you have ice and cold stuff in here, bro.
Means it's insulated.
But it's insulated in a special, crazy way. And this is with no top on, by the way. You fill it up with your ice water. This is what I did one time. I finished, it was maybe 3/4 of it, still some water in there. And I kind of left it, went to bed. The next day, I looked at it, and the ice was still in there. And, sure, that doesn't mean that much. But as far as proving how it keeps the temperature, bro, that's a lot, straight up. Also, it doesn't, sweat. You know how when you have a cold drink if it's on your desk or
if
something?
You're working, you might screw some stuff up.
Hot day, whatever, humid. It's it doesn't even do that. It doesn't do that at all. One time, I was outside at the pool, whatever, cruising. Ice water. Actually, it was Jocko white tea. Boom.
Oh.
We'll get to that too. But so, I leave it there and it's in the sun and I grab it and I'm like, oh, this is going to be totally melted because I'm feeling it, the cup, physically feeling the outside of the cup. And it's straight up hot. The sun is beaming on it. It's hot. If I look inside, ice, still the full on ice, not even melted at all.
Well,
I'm telling you, when you replace your cup,
I'm so happy that you're happy
bro,
with this cup.
I'm telling you right now, when you replace this cup, you're going to find all these benefits to it above and beyond just the dope look and size. And it fits in your cup holder straight up. See how it's like the shape?
Yeah. Cool. All right, next thing.
I feel like we could talk about this for a little bit more.
We don't want to talk about this anymore. I know you like it. I'm glad you like it. I like it too.
All right, next
time
we'll
first
talk
time
more
utilizing it actually, and I'm impressed. My iced tea is still icy.
Bro, I've been getting down with this cup mug for a long time, man. Thoroughly impressed. Anyway, so we got that on the JockoStore, JockoStore.com. We got it on there. Also, should we talk about the Warrior Kid shirts?
You can talk about that.
All right, they're on there too. Warrior Kid shirts, youth sizes for your kids. Boom, there it is.
Very, very cool.
Very
Warrior
cool.
Kids out there.
There's some layers in that one too that I just found out, by the way. Your contribution, the colors and whatnot.
Colors,
yes.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. Go ahead, check it out. Again, JockoStore.com. There's some rash guards on there. New rash guards out. Maybe they're out. Hoodies. We're kind of getting into like a spring. Maybe summer pretty soon. So hoodies might not be as applicable. Either way, they're on there.
We need to start prepping the winter hoodies that I'm going to be more in charge of this time so that they're heavier and more powerful.
Yeah, because you're thinking New England winter.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
I am.
Kauai
I'm also
winter.
thinking Chicago and Minnesota and Iowa.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking Kauai over here. If I was in Kauai, I wouldn't even wear a shirt, much less a sweatshirt.
Bruh, that was my whole point. You're like, hoodies. I was like, bro, what is that?
Yeah, you didn't know what it was.
Actually, my wife knows what hoodies are, so I just consulted with her. Nonetheless, JockoStore.com. That's some cool stuff on there. Travel mugs, all shirts, cool shirts. Support that way, and, you get a little item. Represent in the wild. Boom. Also, Support yourself with this one. Psychological Warfare. If you don't know what that is, which I know you already do, but if you don't, it's an album with tracks, no music. It's Jocko on there. And these tracks are useful. These are utility, what do you call them? Functional, tactical tracks to help you stay on the path. You know, we talked about getting distracted. Some people, they'll get distracted by comfort. You know, like the path.
The path isn't comfortable.
Is riddled with discomfort. Riddled. And sometimes after a while, that discomfort can get to certain people at certain times. So what this Psychological Warfare album does is it keeps you on the path. So, for example, you want to wake up every day early. That one day, you're distracted by the comfort of hitting the snooze button, getting 10 more, 20 more minutes of sleep. That's bad. That's a distraction. That's a deviation from the path. Listen to Psychological Warfare. What's the number? Number 1, I think.
Get up and get after it.
Get up and get it. Listen to that. Put it as your alarm. I dare you to hit snooze. Dare you. Jocko will just tell you practically, in a practical, pragmatic way, why you should not hit the snooze. Boom. I would say with 100% certainty that you will not hit the snooze and you will stay on the path. And that goes for all these other things, deviating from diet, deviating from pushing yourself in a workout, deviating from
going to the gym in the first place.
Going exactly right. Or if you have like this procrastination situation, oh man, that's the main one that, you know, like how you're always like, hey, I need to do this. I should do this.
Just start doing it.
Yeah. Procrastination is pretty much the thing that's going to keep you from doing it. Nonetheless, if you procrastinate, got a little solution for you too. Anyway, Psychological Warfare. Jocko Willink. Look for it on iTunes or Amazon Music, by the way. It's a good one.
That's pretty cool. Also, while you're on Amazon, you can get this book that we just covered today, Conversations with Major Dick Winners. Jocko White Tea is also available on Amazon. If you don't want to drink sodas,
yep,
which no one should be drinking sodas at all. You don't need them. They're actually horrible for you.
Bro, remember when we were eating sushi in New York and I busted out the Coke?
Yeah, I was going to actually just... I was surprised.
I thought that you weren't going to be my friend anymore in real life.
I couldn't believe it. So anyways, Echo has this tradition, which to me sounds like a sugar-coated lie.
Yeah.
That when he eats sushi, he has a glass bottle of Coke. So he did that. I overcame my hatred for him the best I could. It's kind of like when I was talking today about like, hey, if you're a vet, you can't look at everyone like, hey, this person's just I had to be like, okay, Echo's not a bad person. Yeah. He's just mentally weak right now, and we'll just deal with it. Don't drink that. Drink Jocko White Tea, which actually tastes better than Coke. There's no doubt that it tastes better than Coke.
That's subjective, but sure.
Are you serious right now?
I'm saying better is a subjective.
Yeah. That everyone agrees with in the world. Put side by side, taste test.
There you go.
We'll go.
Boom.
I guarantee everybody says, give me the Jocko White Tea. They don't want that. It's syrup and sugar.
I think you might be 147% correct.
Absolutely. We'll do a taste test. Only you can taste the Coke, because I'm not touching my lips to that stuff. Nasty.
All right, you're the man.
One time they had we have a PT situation we call a monster mash.
Sure.
And it's you just do a bunch of crazy events, pull-ups and rope climbs and carry boats around and swim. And we were doing it when I was the officer in charge of TRADET. So the OIC of TRADET. So I brought my son with me. And they did this monster mash. And one of the things you had to do in the monster mash, and this thing's being timed and it's a race and all that stuff, you had to drink a full Coca-Cola through a straw. So my son's doing the monster mash, and he's probably 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he'd never even had a Coke before.
Ooh, it burned his mouth probably.
Yeah, and he just hated it. It was so nasty to him.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at you the other day. Dang, I was like, dude, you're making me sick. So Jocko White Tea, go on there, read the reviews as well. You'll see things like this. Excellent tea when I need to crush and power through the work. I brew me some Jocko White Tea. If I need a little extra kick to crush it, that's what I do. I've begun working fewer hours at the office as my productivity has risen 900%.
Dang.
That's pretty legit.
Actual numbers, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously that's 100% accurate because it came from an Amazon review. So, and actually, there's a warning as well. Caution regarding this product. Leaving your supply of Jocko white tea out in the open will require overwatch. I now have non-tea drinkers hitting my reserves almost as badly as dedicated tea drinkers. No double-blind study required, right? This is the thing. It doesn't taste like tea, right? It doesn't taste like tea, in my opinion. It tastes like victory, but it doesn't taste like tea. Yeah. So that's that. Jocko white tea. You can get it on Amazon.com. Way the Warrior Kid. The book is out, as you know. Thank you for getting it. Kids have been crushing it. It's awesome. That's one of my favorite things that has happened to me in the past several years is people started posting pictures of their kids reading Way the Warrior Kid.
Yeah.
And that was awesome for me to see. And I'll tell you why it was awesome. Because I know those kids are reading that book and they're thinking that they're going to get a little bit better and a little bit stronger and a little bit faster and a little bit smarter. And and people are sending me pictures of kids doing push-ups and kids doing. A guy sent me a video of his kid. You know how you have little night vision in your kid's room so you can monitor them?
Oh, like on a little monitor?
Yeah,
thing?
A little monitor thing.
Yeah.
He sent me a video of the monitor. The kid's in the room after nighttime, after bedtime. Guess what the kid's doing? Push-ups. He's doing push-ups. Why? He wants to get stronger, wants to get better. So, yeah, get that. If you got kids, get it for them. If you're an adult, that's cool. Get it anyways. Adults have a lot to learn from Uncle Jake, myself included. So run out, go to your local bookstore, and grab copies. If they don't have it in your local bookstore, tell them to get it so that other kids can see it and get it. Let's make people better. Also, you can pre-order Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. Again, you can find it in the Get After It section of any bookstore or online bookseller. It is the only book in that section. If your bookstore doesn't have that section, which it probably won't, tell them to get after it and make one. And then put Discipline Equals Freedom there and get a copy of it for yourself. Extreme ownership. Yes, the fundamental principles of combat leadership. They will help you win in any capacity, on the battlefield, on the beat, in business, in life. Extreme Ownership, written by myself and my brother Leif Babin. You can get that book as well. If you need more than the podcast and the book, that's fine. It's okay. Contact our leadership and management consulting company, Echelon Front. info@echelonfront.com. Now, the muster. The muster. We just got done with muster 002 in New York City. What's your assessment, Echo Charles?
My assessment was that it was an upgrade. It was an upgrade from the first one. And that's saying a lot because that first one was like, dang, that was really impactful. To the kind where, and I don't really say like, ooh, this event was impactful. I don't use that word. Not because I'm above it or nothing like that, but I'm just saying to say it got to be for real. So that first one was, I was like, dang, this is really good. From top to bottom, like even, the material, boom, it's like all usable material, all of it. And then, like I always say, and I think people overlook this part a lot of time, like just the social element. It's so easy to make friends with everyone because they all kind of have the same kind of interests and goals. In one way or another, there's going to be some overlap there. And the jiu-jitsu part was fun too, it's like, it's just this great event, And then the second one, and I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't as fired up because it was in New York. It's like outside of the comfort zone. The first one here, San Diego, I was like, oh, sweet. Probably was like, it was even better. This past one was better. Yeah,
it was getting great feedback. Awesome. And like you said, I think one of the most important things that you just said is it's very pragmatic.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, you're going to learn some stuff, but it's not going to be really applicable. No. Yeah. It's going to be applicable. Yeah. When you walk out, when you finish that section and we get done talking about it, boom, you can implement that immediately.
Yeah, it's interesting. You guys have like a lot of military stories and examples, but when you go to the Q&A, like all the people with their questions, not one of them is military. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
work, maybe relationship, maybe here and there,
Yeah.
but it's like at work, you know, like, what do I do?
Yeah, and exactly. In every one of those situations, we answer them. I'd say we answer them with both business examples that we've experienced and military examples. But yeah, you absolutely, we've seen, this is the thing, we've seen it happen before. Whatever that little issue is that you're having,
Yeah.
I've seen it before. You know, I've seen it before. I've seen something like it. We'll be able to find an answer, come to a conclusion, and move forward with the techniques, the principles that we talk about in Extreme Ownership. But it's like this. Extreme Ownership, the book, is an awesome way to get the fundamental principles.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come to the event, now you can really personalize it. You know, you can really make sense of it. It's just like learning jiu-jitsu. Like, it's cool. Yeah, watch the YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Also go to class. Also go to the seminar. Learn it from as many different angles as you can, because the more angles you learn it from, the more proficient you'll be at applying them to your world.
Yeah, and that's not, you know, you talk about jiu-jitsu. Another cool part about it is, you know, when we teach the jiu-jitsu on the last day, like, you can come and actually like try to choke Jocko.
Yeah, you come and bring it.
You think that's kind of, you know, because think about it. Most times, like, if you go to like a you know, thing, you
like,
can't go try to choke the guy at the end of it. You know,
you can't say like, hey, I'm going to go see this concert, and then afterwards I'm going to pick up a guitar and play, you know, the solos with, you know, Eric Clapton.
Yeah, exactly right.
That doesn't happen.
And
this you can.
Yeah, and this is like actually choking the person. You know, so that's like an added element. You know. I mean, I got to roll with like plenty of the guys, man. It's just so cool to be like, oh yeah, you know, we talk about this, and then you get it on afterwards, you know.
And so, anyways, if you didn't make it to New York City, which was awesome, Times Square, we had a great time. The next one we're having July 13th and 14th in Austin, Texas, the Omni Barton Creek Resort and Spa. Now, this is one thing that it just is what it is. In New York, we were planning to do like 350 people. Yeah. And then we sold that out. We opened it up for another 50, and we had to expand our room to get that. And then that sold out. And so then we rearranged the situation in there to get more people in there. It looks like in Austin we're capped. We can't get any bigger than the room that we've got. And so it's 350. So if you want to come, sign up quick. Before it gets sold out, because there's no way we can expand it into more people. So just be aware of that. Yeah. If you can't make that, 13th and 14th, July 13th and 14th in Austin, Texas, San Diego, California, September 14th and 15th. We're back in San Diego for follow-on operations, so come and get it. While you're waiting for the muster, if you need to pass communications to myself or Echo Charles, we can be found on the interwebs. Twitter, Instagram, plus we on that Facebookie. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And thanks to everyone for listening to the podcast, for sharing the podcast, for supporting the podcast. We really do appreciate it. Thanks to the military personnel out there that are protecting our freedoms overseas. And also the law enforcement, the firefighters, EMTs, first responders that keep us safe here at home. Thanks to you all. And to everyone, whatever your mission might be. Let's think about Dick Winter's personal quest. Very simple. To excel in everything he did. Excel in everything he did. We should do the same. Excel in everything we do. From working to working out. From the way we treat people to the way we treat ourselves. Excel. Put forth your greatest effort in everything you do, from the small, seemingly meaningless tasks to the big goals. As you attack those goals, or as those goals start to grind you down, remember the obsessive, pure, determined effort that Dick Winters taught us all. And go out there and get after it. So until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.